across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, your connected device, and if you've not done one of those, have a go at them. See what you think. If you've been listening and you haven't been watching, or you've been watching and haven't been listening, you can have a little swap around. And we are, of course, here for you, whichever you choose. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. And if you miss anything of the show, don't forget you can always go to my YouTube page. We've got the Talk YouTube page, but also got the Julia Hartley-Brewer show. Easy to find. You can't miss it. You can hit subscribe and then you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about a little bit of a problem for the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, after a think tank highlighted the fact that she's facing not that £22 billion black hole or any other number, but apparently a £50 billion black hole when it comes to finances over the next few years. Well, she's got an autumn budget where we're already expecting taxes to go up, but really, can you fill that black hole without, well, either massively slashing spending? No evidence they're willing to do that so far, when you certainly look at welfare reform and pay rises for many public sector workers, or you're going to have to break your fiscal rules. Well, she said that they were watertight and she wouldn't do that. Or you are going to have to raise taxes, possibly even breaking your pledge about not raising those three key taxes on working people. Well, they've already lied about so much. I'm sure they are willing to lie to us about one more thing. But realistically, what do you want the Prime Minister and the Chancellor to do about that £50 billion black hole? Because if there is that massive black hole and we have to put the money on our debt, we're just going to be spending an absolute fortune servicing that debt, again, in breach of those fiscal rules that she set herself about day-to-day spending being funded by, well, day-to-day taxation. Or your taxes are going up. What do you want to go up? What do you want to be cut? I'd love to hear from you, because the answer from lots of Labour supporters usually seems to be tax those wealthy people over there. The trouble is, there are only so many very wealthy people, and they seem to be very, very, very good at being mobile, and they move around, particularly to other countries. So if you tax them even more, they will just leave, and then we have even less tax receipts here, and then they're going to have to tax you and me. Is it your council tax? Is it VAT? Is it income tax thresholds? Is it more national insurance? Is it tax on anything else? On other property taxes? What is it? What should the government tax? Or should they not put a penny up in tax? Should they cut taxes? And should they be cutting public spending at the same time? In which case, what would you cut? I've got some rather obvious suggestions. I'm net zero, anyone? But I'd love to hear your ideas. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number. You know it already. You can get in touch with us by text on 87222. You can get in touch on X at Talk TV. As you already know, calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. Also, of course, going to continue our... I mean, it'll be a forever conversation, this, won't it, about channel migrants. Apparently, under the rules, that the channel migrants will be able to frustrate attempts to deport them to France under that one-in, one-out rule, because they're going to be able to exploit not just human rights laws, but pretty much every single rule under the sun to stop themselves actually being sent home. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has held a deal done by the US, which we announced on the show yesterday, where they'll be able to deport hundreds of illegal migrants to, guess where? Rwanda. Well, where are they going to put them in Rwanda? Well, rather conveniently, British taxpayers funded £750 million of new accommodation for our own migrants. But no, they're going to be used by the Americans. So well done, everyone there. Plus, J.K. Rowling has called for a boycott of Marks and Sparks. She says as the retailer continues to allow trans-identifying men into women's changing rooms, and in particular the changing rooms in the lingerie section, even working there and offering to fit bras, then we should simply stop giving the store our money. I am 100% behind her on this. The author spoke out after it was revealed that M&S had apologised to her mother after a trans employee, 6'2" bloke, asked her teenage daughter if she needed any help in the bra section. Yeah, creepy much? Yeah, we'll talk about that later in the show with Helen Joyce. All of that coming up, plenty more besides. Joining me for all the chat, voice of reason, voice of sanity, even though she did work in the Tory government. But you know, we forgive and forget. It's Claire Pissell, former Conservative Government Advisor in the Home Office. Good morning.
Morning.
Lovely to see you. Looking very sparkly and glamorous today, by the way.
Well, it's summertime and, you know, things aren't great, so we have to
try
make
and
up
you're
for
buoying
it.
things out. You're buoying things out. I like that. £50 billion black hole. Now, the Labour government came in saying, oh, we don't know what the finances are like. We don't know what we're going to have to do. But they did promise they wouldn't raise three key taxes. They said on working people. That was national insurance. They don't think employer national insurance practically counts. Income tax and VAT, although we all pay a lot more taxes than that, as we all know these days. But they said they wouldn't do that, but they also said they had fiscal rules, and Rachel Reeves was adamant about that. And then they went, oh, we've looked at the books, and you'll never guess what. There's this £22 billion black hole. They're still yapping on about it at PMQs and every Chancellor's questions. Now, it turns out, according to the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, they genuinely are a respected independent think tank. They know their tomatoes. And they say, actually, it's a £50 billion black hole, and her wafer-thin headroom of, you have to say wafer-thin, the wafer-thin headroom of £9.9 billion that Rachel Reeves pretended she has, so she can make all the numbers add up, is all being wiped out, and there's a budget deficit of 41.2 billion, so totals 50 billion quid. What should she do about it?
Not raise taxes on individuals. How about looking at what the Labour government are spending the money on? Because we've seen enormous pay rises for certain sectors of the public sector. Train drivers, for example, nurses, doctors, anybody that demands a pay rise seems to have got one. But also look at things like overseas aid, look at things like net zero. That would bring down some of that £50 billion black hole. I wonder how many times she's going to mention that, because you can't blame all of that on the Tories.
Well, they really, really can't, can they? I mean, again, a lot of that is down to her own bungled last budget and those national insurance rises on employers that came in. And again, you said no, shouldn't raise taxes on individuals. But there's this idea that, well, businesses can just pay taxes. Businesses are made up of individuals.
Yes.
There's the employer, the employee, the director, the people who start the business. And again, there is an absolute lie that all these people are not paying tax. They are paying tax. They're paying tax on the director's remuneration. They're paying national insurance. A lot of them on PAYE as well. They are paying corporation tax. There's very someone used to be on the the IR35 because as a freelancer you had no choice about that in my industry. That's it. That's the only basis on which you could be paid. You don't actually have a tax benefit from that anymore. So it's absolute load of nonsense. The only tax benefit is if you are an entrepreneur and then when you sell your business later on. But should we not be giving people incentives there? But the thing is, you tax businesses, you tax profits to that extent, people stop bothering making money. They don't hire new people, and those people, they're not employed, paying taxes, buying more goods, paying more VAT on them. It carries on. There is ample evidence that if you raise a whole load of taxes, you don't necessarily get more tax money in. The weird thing is, the sums of the black hole are so big now, the only way you could really fill it would be to put up the basic rate of income tax. If you look at the countries that have really good public services, around Western Europe, and their basic rate of income tax is way higher than ours. Way higher. It is just the norm. But I suppose there's that trade-off, but you know what? I can get an operation within 2 years. My kids' schools aren't bad. The roads aren't full of potholes. So people kind of accept that. But, they actually also quite sluggish economies. They're not very entrepreneurial. The powerhouse juggernaut of Europe, Germany, is tanking. We're going to have higher growth in Germany. Imagine if Rachel Reeves can deliver higher growth than the German government. That tells you how bad they are. But there's loads of stuff we spend money on that we are just not getting anything back for. Net zero. I mean, net zero is a massive drain on the country's resources. It costs us billions. I mean, all the DEI nonsense, cut that out. There's an awful lot of NGOs, non-governmental organisations, charities, who get huge amounts of government money. And I'm like, well, why? If they're either it's something that should be funded by the state. I don't understand why hospices should be charities. Hospices should surely be run by the state, but they get money. But they're paid for by taxpayers. But there's an awful lot of nonsense charities that do absolutely nothing of any use to society. Well, if someone thinks that's important, then someone can give their own hard-earned money to it rather than pledging my money to it. But as you mentioned, as you said, DI, but the number one thing we have to talk about is welfare, isn't it? It's welfare. You cannot have millions of people of working age who are perfectly able-bodied and, frankly, in my view, able-minded as well, not working or working part-time. They talk about the working poor couple, 3 kids, council house, or we're paying their housing benefit and private accommodation. She's not working at all. He's working 2 days a week. Everyone goes, oh, they're the working poor. No, they're not. They're the sofa benefits poor is what they are. They need to be required, full stop, are required to work, or they will not have any food on the table.
And it's a really easy decision. Do you want your kids to have a roof over their head and food on the table? If the answer is yes, then you go out to work. I was a single parent for 9 years.
Yeah.
I didn't earn very much money at the time.
Did you sit on the sofa and say someone needs to pay for me?
No,
No,
I
funny
went
that.
back to work.
All the single parents I know
didn't earn very much money, but had a roof over our head, there was food on the table, my child had clothes and shoes. I didn't have very much, and it was really hard.
Well, you're not one
But
of those
tough luck.
really, really fat mums with arms like my thighs going into the... Well, no, look at her. She's fat. Who was found by the BBC in a food bank saying, I have to miss meals to feed my child. And I'm thinking, I think you should miss a few meals if you don't mind me saying, lady. But I don't think you are starving in your home.
No, and you find ways of doing it. You look for bargains in supermarkets. You get the yellow stickered, anybody that's been out shopping, you know, the yellow stickers reduced items, but you do it and you learn how to cook. I was fortunate, my mum had taught me how to cook some really basic meals.
Skills, yeah.
But I learned. There was the internet, marvellous resource, looked up some recipes, actually got off my backside, learned how to cook, made a difference.
And of course, it's so much cheaper. There's lots of things again, but this all comes back down to, you know, again, personal responsibility. That has a massive impact. But you know what the answer is going to be in the budget. It's going to be taxing businesses. There'll be some sneaky taxes like tax thresholds and things like that. There'll be a tiny little cut to make it look like they're doing something, but they're not cutting welfare. They're committed to net zero. They're committed to a lot of overseas aid as well. They're committed to these pay rises, public sector workers. These are all already baked in. And some of them are deserved, some not. But at the end of the day, they're not going to solve this without putting tax up. They're going to try and put it up on a lot of wealthy people and corporations, and they will simply head off overseas within the year, if not before the autumn, if that's what they think is happening. And then we're going to be in even bigger doo-doo. I think I can say that words I can't say on air than we are already, and we are in a downward spiral. Of higher taxes for everybody, which bring in lower tax receipts. I mean, you know, one of the other things we're going to look at is trying to reform council tax. But again, they'll upset more people than they please.
Well, they certainly will. And I think that most people accept that there will be tax increases, but it isn't going to be this penny on the basic rate of income tax. But I think that moment has passed. If the Chancellor needs to make up the money, you're looking at more like 5 pence on the basic rate, which is an enormous increase for a lot of people. But that's where we're going. So you either look at how you reduce your spending, or you have to tax people more. But you can't lie
and that
about
means
this
if you're
in
a
budget.
basic income earner, okay, you've got your personal threshold around 12 grand, but basically you're paying 20%, so 1/5 of all your earnings after that first 12 grand. So you're earning like 30, 40 grand, these are average incomes now. So 1/5 of that after 12 grand goes to the taxpayer, plus your national insurance as well. Let's remember that. We're looking at the equivalent of a quarter of it going to the taxman. These are, again, a lot of people just scraping by, just making ends meet right now. One extra bill puts them over. The car, you get a puncture, the car needs a new tyre or something. The finances are these are the families who, why on earth have you managed to rip another pair of school trousers, parents? Because we can't afford a new. It's that level that a lot of people are living at right there, just at the very, very edge. Washing machine breaks down. Is a financial disaster for lots of families. And I don't think Rachel Reeves and others get that, because they've always had everything on the, well, they've all worked in the public sector all their lives. They don't understand how a lot of people live. I'd love to hear from you. I mean, what is the answer? We'll talk to economist Julian Jessup a bit later on this, but 0344 499 1000. What do you want the Chancellor to do? Should she raise taxes? Should she cut spending? She should just borrow more, which is equivalent to just raising taxes for people in the future? I would love to hear your thoughts. Let's also talk about this absurd one in, one out plan that is not. It's going to involve 17 in, one out. I mean, it's just abject nonsense anyway. But absolutely, the government insists there is not going to be a loophole, a human rights loophole to avoid return to France. Absolute nonsense. Within the actual treaty, it's very, very, very clear that migrants will be ineligible for deportation if they have any outstanding human rights claims or other legal challenges ongoing, or claim they're under 18. So the moment they know they're on that list, they simply make a challenge of some sort. Can't be deported. That'll be fighting through the courts. It'll be 2 years. Yeah, I'd be surprised if anyone goes, unless it's someone like we've had people go to Rwanda. We pay them $3,000. Plus, British taxpayers are going to be paying their transport back to France, and the transport of the asylum seekers supposedly legitimate because they know someone in Leicester. Their transport over here. I mean, we've been taken for mugs again, haven't we?
Well, of course we have, but this is down to Keir Starmer and his great negotiating skills.
It's brilliant.
I mean, what a deal to come back with is that we pay for everything.
Yeah.
We take some people who the French claim will have an asylum right.
By the way,
in
the French
UK.
don't want those people.
Exactly.
They're such legitimate asylum seekers, the French don't want them.
So we're getting them. Do we trust the French system to judge these people to be right for the United Kingdom?
I'm assuming that we get to vet them. I mean, I'm maybe being far too generous in this.
That's a big assumption, because I don't think that's written in either.
Yeah.
But listening to the Home Secretary out on the media round, she doesn't know when it's going to start. She doesn't know how many people. She doesn't know if it will continue. She's just hoping that it'll come soon.
I mean, we were discussing on the show yesterday, it's quite obvious that these people who do come will be bringing their entire family with them at the time. Obviously. And then their second cousin will have and then their brother-in-law. I mean, it's such a nonsense. And again, the reason why they're going to allow this to happen is they think, A, it's a sop to us idiots, will just fall for it. Go, well, they're dealing with it. B, they do not understand that. And I wrote a column for The Sun about this when this first came out. We don't want 1 in, 1 out. And again, it's certainly not 17 in, 1 out. 800 come 800 on average come a week, and we're going to get rid of 50, but get 50 back plus all their relatives. I don't see why anyone thinks that's a big deal, a good deal for us. It's like we want none in, all out. I mean, the stats in terms of the polling on immigration now, both legal and illegal, it's an absolute sea change in the last year in terms of people just like, really we're done now. The huge swathes of the population want an end to all net migration now, indeed all immigration entirely, saying, look, that's it, we're done now, we're closed, let's have a breather, and deportations of people who've come in recent years. And I'm with them.
It's interesting that the amount of people that I've spoken to, you always have immigration conversations with some people. You have a good Barney about it. And there are some people who I've never said a word about immigration to previously who are now really worried. Yeah. They've never bothered themselves with it before. It's never come up on their agenda. They would have dismissed
people like me as far-right bigots.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now they're saying, but why can't we get rid of these people? Why are there 25,000 coming across the channel?
Well,
these are too many.
These are people who probably watch the BBC and have just discovered, having seen these undercover BBC reporters paying 1,200 quid to a people smuggler. I tell you what, though, capitalism used to be $5,000 to get across the channel. Now it's just 1,200. Capitalism works, guys. That's the free market for you. Went into the wrong business. But undercover BBC reporters paid money to violent people smuggling gangs as part of an investigation, and they're being hailed like, oh, this amazing year-long investigation. I'm sorry, other media have been doing this for years, exposing this stuff.
Not paying out 900
I don't
quid
mind
in
if they
cash
say they
either.
had to pay it to confront them because they got their footage, and I mean they paid money to I mean, come on, the BBC pays money to Hamas ministers and their families for documentaries, for goodness sake. This is a lot less worth. But again, like, the BBC has finally discovered that A, this is happening, and B, that it might be a bad thing. Oh, thanks for catching up. You're about 5 years late, guys.
Do they offer up any solution to it? No, and I appreciate it's the BBC, so they are impartial. Yeah. So they can't offer up any solution. But, I mean, yes, there are media outlets that have highlighted this from time after time. There are people who have written in newspapers like yourself who have written columns on this for at least a decade.
I was writing about this stuff in the Sunday Express in the early 2000s. The early 2000s.
So longer than a decade.
Yeah, I mean, some of us have been right about everything all along. Just saying. Wonderful to be married to. Can I just say, just before we go to a break, it's breaking news. Donald Trump's top negotiator, golf buddy, Steve Witkoff, has met with Vladimir Putin in Moscow. This is according to the Russian news agency Interfax. We don't know whether it's already taken place, if it's ongoing. It's the first time the pair have met since April. Of course, repeatedly, Putin has kept him waiting 8 hours and things like that. And, I mean, again, I wouldn't even wait. I mean, I'm sorry, you know, if you're the representative of Donald Trump, you go in on at the dot you've said you're going in, end of. Otherwise, you get back on your plane, in my view. But is this hopeful? We've got this deadline, this 50-day deadline, which was always outrageous from Donald Trump to for a ceasefire from Putin to agree to that. That's been put down to 35 days, well, no, to 12 days, 10 days. Friday is the deadline. Yeah. We've got no expectation that Russia will do this. They want to take quite a few territories in the Donbass region before they even come to the table. But is it a good sign that they're actually speaking?
I think we always have to see these things as a good sign. What comes out of it, I'm not that hopeful.
Well, I mean, given that Witkoff, when he first started this, didn't even know whether Crimea was in the Donbass or not. It was a bit worrying. Basic geography might be useful.
Maybe somebody's got him a map so he could learn about it. But look, he is sitting there, he is talking. Putin isn't the most honourable gentleman when it comes to keeping agreements, which, funnily enough, Trump has now found out after thinking he was quite a good bloke.
The two sides of the same coin, those two, in that respect.
They are.
At least one of them is democratically elected.
We may well get some kind of movement. I don't think it'll be anything significant, and I don't think it'll be long lasting.
No, indeed. Again, if we do have sanctions on their sort of, secondary sanctions on their trading partners, frankly, India and China need to be punished. Especially India. You want to pretend to be, in the Western world, like, well, then stop buying oil from Russia. And by the way, we should stop buying it from India. A lot of Europe is doing that as well, oil and gas. Anyway, we'll talk all about all of those stories more in the coming couple of hours. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. All your thoughts. Lots of calls coming in. We'll get to those up next. This is Talk.
Been lied to about how many people are coming to the country, and that won't be revealed. And then we're lied about what effect the immigrants have when they come to this country. And it's only very recently, now that the public is getting angrier and angrier about this, so we're beginning to find out that if you're an Afghan asylum seeker here, you are 20 times more likely to be charged with a sexual offence than if you're a British. Indigenous British.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning to you, and I'm wishing the day away. Then 10:27 is the time. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Still, I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. A lot of you wanted to get in touch about that £50 billion black hole that Rachel Reeves going to discover, according to a well-respected financial economic think tank. The trouble is that £50 billion black hole is our problem just as much as it's hers, because she's got to fill it, and she's got to fill it somehow, and it's going to be your and my money eventually that's going to be used. So what do we suggest that she does? Well, let's talk to Ian, who's in Bridgend. Good morning to you.
Hello, Julia. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Pleasure to speak to you.
Off, could I just make a comment? Us down here in Wales, we were all pulling our hair out every time we heard the expression, well, we knew they'd be bad, but we didn't know they'd be this bad. Blimey, we told you often enough and long enough, didn't we?
We did. Well, you've had a Labour government all this time.
Indeed. You know, we had a personal injury lawyer, Carwyn Jones. He was a right clown, he was. So,
well,
yeah,
we stand corrected. We stand corrected, Ian. Thanks for the warnings.
That's all right. Yeah, I think the best thing they can do is for Starmer to resign and move to his beloved Davos, sack his cabinet.
Or Chagos.
And then we can let the actual grown-ups take over.
Well, I hate to tell you, I mean, if he resigned, we'd still be one of the Labour lot. Who would you want?
Oh, blimey.
Yeah, there you are. You see, I stumped you there. No, realistically, genuinely, what should they do? She says she's not going to break her fiscal rules, so she won't borrow anymore. And if she did, I mean, we're looking at a huge interest rate. We're paying, is it 110 billion a year just in interest on our debt, not even paying the debt off? Or she's got to raise taxes on someone or something, or she's got to cut spending. What would you prefer she did? Or she could do all three.
Well, I don't know. Are there as many as 4 billionaires left in the country, you know, that could afford to pay a wealth tax?
Well, they won't be left in the country if you put it on them. Do you think that Labour always think there's just some rich people over there who'll pay for it all? Do you think they understand that those people are going to go, adios?
Well, yeah, you know, they're all, it's like a child's mentality with them, isn't it? They've got their ideology and that's it. They stick into it, whatever, can thick off in.
Well, it's all very well they can think that, and it's easy when you're kind of you're an opposition and you're basically a Tuesday night book club, which is what you are, an opposition. But when you actually have to deal with it, like dealing with the migrant problem, you can wag your finger as much. When it's your problem, you've got to deal with it. But there's a £50 billion black hole. If she doesn't deal with it, the markets are going to go crazy, and then we're going to be in even deeper hole. So,
well, yeah, you know, I was anticipating this anyway. You know, we're going to go back to Callaghan as a crisis. What crisis? The IMF. You know, it's only a matter of time before they come in now and the currency dives.
That would be so humiliating, wouldn't it? Him prancing around on the world stage pronouncing he's recognising Palestinian states and the IMF's having to run our economy. Oh, the shame. Ian, thank you very much. Greetings to those in Bridgend. David is not that far away from you, actually, in Gloucestershire. David, what do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
Well, I just had a quick look at the ministerial code yesterday, and first of all, it says they can do no harm to the country. Well, they've broken that. I couldn't get into all of it, but I assume it would also say they shouldn't lie, so they must have broken that. And how many other of the ministerial codes have they also broken? So surely they should all have to resign, quite frankly.
Thing is, all the governments do that. I mean, name me a government where people didn't lie. That's my thing I most want, is someone to come in and say, these are the problems. This is how much it's going to cost to fix. And if someone honestly said, yeah, we're going to have to raise some of the taxes to do this specific thing, but we're going to spend your money well, and we're not going to spend money on things that don't matter anymore. And I would absolutely pray to have somebody like that come in who's really brutally honest with the taxpayer.
Well, we all hope that Mr Farage might be that person, but hey-ho, we can all hope and wait. But on the other hand, if on with Rachel Reeves, she's now managed to, she's more than double the debt. If your accountant had doubled the debt, would you not insist on resignation / sack them immediately?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think her argument would be like, it wasn't my fault. This is all long-standing problems with Tory policy for 14 years. What would you say to that?
Well, we all know that I'm not a Tory supporter anymore, and it's just, we all know they messed up. Labour was always going to be worse, you know. And basically we are the mess that we are. But I mean, like the chap previous said, I am waiting for the IMF, and I've said it before. You know, I know people with money, and anybody with a brain has got their money abroad. You know, so they're not going to be bringing it into the country anytime soon.
I'm going to say
they are living here.
That's true. Note to self: send money abroad. Thank you very much indeed, David in Gloucester. Thank you very much with his, with his accounts in the Caymans. 10:32 is the time. We'll take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Rupert Lowe, MP for Great Yarmouth, of course, and leader of Restore Britain. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall still with me, former Conservative government advisor. I could get her thoughts on what my next guest has to say in just a couple of moments. He is Rupert Lowe. He's the MP for Great Yarmouth, former, of course, Reform MP, now leader of his own party, Restore Britain. A very good morning to you, Rupert.
Morning, Julia. Not a party, a movement.
A movement. Oh, it's difficult to keep up with. There are so many these days. So, you wait for one new party to turn up, and 3 or 4 turn up, don't they?
We are a unifying rather than a dividing force, Julia. It's very important that you understand that. I've had one journalist who's tried 3 times to understand it, but can't quite.
Well,
get
I'm a bear of little brain. We'll see. Let's talk about how we do restore Britain in terms of our finances. Rachel Reeves has got not a £22 billion black hole, not £9.9 billion of fiscal headroom, whatever the hell that is, but now she's got a £50 billion black hole. That's according to the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. How should she fill that hole?
Well, ultimately, Julia, her problem is, along with the entire Labour Party, most of the civil service and most of the organs of the state, they seem to think that it is the state that is important and the private sector, which is less important. And history teaches you the most important thing is the private sector. It's the private sector which directs investment sensibly, usually long-term investment, if it can see it's going to make a return.
Yep.
And the problem she's got is that, quite apart from the fact we've all got very bored of her parroting this 20 billion black hole, maybe she's going to parrot this 50 billion black hole against herself, which she can't blame the Tories for, at least. But the point is they have this ideological view that the state is good and the private sector is bad. So what they're doing is whipping the private sector. And it's the private sector that funds everything. It's the genesis of wealth. And what they don't understand is that the more you tax the private sector, the less the private sector will pay. It's basically Lafferite economics, which teaches you that in order to grow an economy, you deregulate it, you don't regulate it. And it was an irony when she talked about regulating for growth. Well, you don't regulate for growth, you deregulate.
It's kind of the opposite. I mean, there's some regulation we need in terms of, safety and things like that. But I think most people with the view that things have got
I'm
out
afraid
of control.
I don't always agree. I think that's what the state does. It immediately, it legislates, it passes laws, it licenses, it regulates. That's how the state makes itself relevant.
No, I think there's a reason why we don't have children losing arms in threshing machines anymore because there's some state regulation.
Julia, trust me, is now a malign force.
Well, I know, but there's a basic level of regulation that is required and is good for people. And I think most people's view, it's just got completely and utterly out of hand. Here's the thing, though.
So I think, again, look at the private schools. They put this VAT on private schools, which they said was going to effectively raise them tax. But in fact, people have now prepaid, as you've probably seen. They're now trying to close that loophole. So all that happens is the state goes from one catastrophe to another, when really what it should do is just let people innovate, let them be entrepreneurs. Because the point about an entrepreneur is there's no point in taking risk, and it's an entrepreneur that lubricates the economy.
Yeah, I get that. Here's the thing.
But if when you're successful, the state takes all the success
then
money
people won't bother or they'll go abroad. I completely understand that.
You still have to pay.
But Rupert,
you still have to pay if you get it wrong.
We're paying £110 billion a year right now, just servicing our debt, just paying the interest on our debt, let alone paying any of it off. An awful lot of voters who were demanding furlough money, demanding we carried on lockdowns. I know you weren't one of those people, but demanding that we gave people money to help with their energy costs, demanding this, demanding that. A little bit surprised that there's a bill at the end and we actually have to pay for some of that now. How do we pay for that? It's all very well saying we don't want higher taxes on business. We don't want to have so much regulation, but we also need some money. So either we need some extra tax income, or how will we get it, or we need to cut spending. What would you do if you were in her position?
Well, you have to remember that the definition of credit, Julia, is suspicion asleep. And as I've said, that is the definition of credit. And we have far too much debt now, which effectively means that other people own our debt, and we are at their behest rather than at our own.
What are we going to do about it, Rupert? I don't want to talk esoterically about it. I want to know what we're going to do about it.
Julia, there's only one thing to do, and that is to radically pursue a Thatcherite agenda of deregulation, massive cuts in the state, and ultimately, we've got to empower the private sector and reward entrepreneurs. We don't want to overtax. And there's this idiot Burgon who's constantly banging on about a wealth tax.
Richard Burgon. Many Labour MPs are doing that.
A wealth tax, Julia, will just drive anybody successful now out of the country. They don't seem to understand that now global capital is very mobile. People are very mobile. There are countries like Italy and like Dubai, like Greece. I've got friends, literally this week I've had 2 friends going to Greece. They welcome successful people who are going to invigorate their economy, whereas we're actually punishing them and driving them away.
And when you talk about cutting the state,
she's getting into a vicious circle rather than a virtuous circle.
Yeah, and again, we're going to have lower tax take and more demand on the state, etc.
Correct.
What sort of cuts to the state would you be looking in terms of the big state spending? We can mess around with a bit of DEI and things like that, which we absolutely need to get rid of. I'm full Trump on that. But even Elon Musk failed to make quite the level of cuts he had promised. He did hundreds of billions, but not the trillions a lot of people had hoped in American spending.
Well, I think that was the genesis of his argument with Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly. But
Trump didn't want to go quite as far as Elon Musk.
Exactly. What cuts?
I actually think Musk is probably right, but maybe too much.
Okay, Rupert, focus. What cuts should we be making to the state here?
Well, you have to start by cutting regulation, Julia. I mean, I spoke in Parliament just before the recess about the damage that the FCA and the PRA have done to our financial markets. London used to be the actual capital centre certainly of Europe and arguably of the world when you had a vibrant Eurobond market and you had vast amounts of revenue.
Okay, I understand the regulation point.
That's been destroyed by regulation.
Rupert,
so you could actually get rid of the FCA. You asked me a question.
No, I know, but that's okay. It's not what I was asking you about. You're talking about.
It is.
We've talked about deregulation. No, in terms of actual, we want to generate more money. I get that. But we've also got a huge amount of government spending that has to be funded in the next few years or has to not be there. What would you cut?
You have to start by cutting government waste, Julia, and there's vast waste. America's shown that. You know, you've got huge amounts of waste. There are lots of easy wins. The problem is you've got to have the will to do it. And the problem is you've now got a government. And to give you an example, Daniel Zeichner, when I had a meeting with him about this wretched farm tax that he's put on, which I think will break the backbone of our British farms, as indeed it will our private businesses, because they put tax on businesses as well, which is a nonsense. I mean, he looked me in the eye and he said very often the state's more efficient than the private sector. Well, we all know that's palpable rubbish. So until you get some people in Parliament who actually believe in deregulation and understand the essence of economics, because none of the front bench have had any economic experience.
And this is true. Like, well, obviously, I'm obviously not going to get a direct answer. Let's move on to something else. I want to talk about migrants. We've got this one in, one out. In fact, it's 17 in, plus all their relatives, one out, possibly, policy from the Prime Minister's deal with Emmanuel Macron. We're paying for the whole thing. We don't know how many people it'll end up being, whether it'll last a long time, when it will actually start. I mean, abject load of nonsense. No one in our audience certainly is buying it for a nanosecond. Now we found out that human rights legislation means anyone who makes a challenge or says, oh no, I may have a beard and maybe balding, but I'm actually only 17, so you can't deport me. Those challenges can go on for years. What do you make of this government's attempts to deal with the illegal migration crisis?
Well, I don't trust Keir Starmer to negotiate anything, Julia. You only have to look at what he did in the Chagos Islands with all his human rights muckers like Sams and Hermer. And I have absolutely no faith in him being able to cut a good deal with Macron. Macron is, like our EU exit deal was an appalling deal because our civil service didn't believe in leaving the European Union, despite the fact that was the instruction that people gave them. So I have no faith in him cutting a good deal. I think it's rubbish, this deal he's cut. Ultimately, Macron told him what to do. What you have to do is stop rewarding illegal migrants when they land in Britain. The minute you stop that, and you only have to look at what Trump has done in America, illegal immigration is collapsing in America because people know they aren't going to be able to stay. But here, they know they're going to be able to stay. They get welcomed by Border Patrol, given a bottle of water, they chuck their phones overboard, they then go straight to the top of the waiting lists for medical treatment. I was reading about somebody getting dialysis before British taxpayers. Honestly, we are just a soft touch, and until we start to get real, I think it's just pure sort of shuffling the chairs on the deck of the Titanic.
Can I ask you, you mentioned about people getting medical treatment. What do you make of the plan to bring in some 300 very sick children from Gaza to be treated on the NHS, bringing their parents? And Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, admitting on the telly and radio yesterday that, yes, some of them may stay. I mean, I would suggest she's wrong. I would say all of them.
I've publicly said, Julia, it's palpable nonsense. And ultimately, we've got to start prioritising the interests of British people. It will just mean that taxpayers who fund this country and who generate the growth, as you were saying just now, to try and put right what's gone wrong, which is too much statism. Ultimately, if you start bumping them down the waiting list, you're just going to encourage people to leave. Why should they fund these people who've made no contribution to Britain whatsoever? And we need to start putting the British at the top of the agenda. And until we do that, we will continue to be the laughing stock of the world.
Just finally, I want to ask you about comments. I've actually had a conversation off air with Nigel Farage about this and what's happened. And I said on my audience I would, when Nigel Farage appeared to agree with Vanessa Frake, his new advisor at the Reform Party, your former party, when she said she's a former prison governor, a friend of the show, brilliant, lovely lady, but she was saying she thought that there shouldn't be an automatic ban on all trans-identifying men from entering women's prisons. It should be on a case-by-case basis, depending on risk assessments. Now, seems to me to be very clear, full stop. If you're a man, you're a risk to women. You have no right in being in a women's prison. I think this is a massive issue for an awful lot of women and will actually be a deal breaker for a lot of people who might have considered voting for Nigel Farage. Where do you stand on this? Should it be on a case-by-case basis?
Well, I agree with J.K. Rowling that it appears that Reform have gone woke, Julia. I mean, on a number of issues, they appear to have gone woke, not just welfare payments, but almost every aspect of what Nigel utters now appears to be in conflict with what he said in the past. So I totally disagree. I do agree with the Supreme Court. At least now we know a woman is a woman and a man is a man.
I knew before.
You are the sex that you are effectively born with. And I'm afraid that anyone who is born or possesses a one-eyed trouser snake in his underpants is a man. And at the end of the day, should not be going into women's spaces, whether it's prisons, whether it's loos, whatever. So the Gender Recognition Act, we're very clear on that as well, needs to be repealed. I think we've all had enough of the minorities driving the way in which the majority of people live. And it's time that the silent majority stood up and basically made common sense prevail.
Okay, well, we shall see.
Ultimately what Restore Britain is all about.
Right, Rupert Lowe, MP for Great Yarmouth, the leader of Restore Britain movement. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Covered a lot of ground there. Claire Pearsall, listen to all that. You come back on whichever you choose.
I like his comments over the problem with gender and prisons. I think that's a really good one to have. I think Rupert needs to go and learn a little bit more about answering a question as to what you.
Thought that about a lot of politicians, but there we are. Claire, thank you for that. Up next, actually, we return to J.K. Rowling and her call for a boycott of Marks and Sparks. We'll find out why up next. This is Talk.
Been lied to about how many people are coming to the country, and that won't be revealed. And then we're lied about what effect the immigrants have when they come to this country. And it's only very recently, now that the public is getting angrier and angrier about this, so we're beginning to find out that if you're an Afghan asylum seeker here, you are 20 times more likely to be charged with a sexual offence than if you're a British. Indigenous British.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. For me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:51 is the time. Claire Pearsall still with me. Delighted to be joined right now by Helen Joyce. She's the Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters. You knew that already. She's also author of the brilliant book Transgender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. A very good morning to you, Helen.
Hi, Julia.
Well, I mean, we have just had that conversation about trans identifying men, call them what they are, entering men's prisons. I want with Rupert Lowe, I want to ask you about that at the end. But if I actually want to talk about J.K. Rowling being in the news once again, and my God, we love her for being in the news on these things and taking a stand. This time, she's calling for a boycott of Marks and Sparks, one of the stalwarts of the high street. I mean, they pretty much boycotted their customers themselves with their computer glitches earlier this year. But why does the author of the Harry Potter books thinks we should all be refusing to spend our money with M&S?
So this started with the story that came out about a 14-year-old girl who went bra shopping with her mother for the first time, and she realised that a staff member who came up to her and asked her for help, which, by the way, people don't really do when you're bra shopping when you're a teenager. They know to leave you alone. And it was a man's voice. So she looks around and sees that it's a man over 6'2", dressed as a woman, and he's approaching a teenage girl to ask if she would like help with picking out a bra.
I mean, not
so
in any way intimidating or creepy at all for a young girl.
Exactly, and it turned out that this man didn't actually work in the lingerie department.
I'm sorry,
which is
what?
something, I suppose. He didn't work in the lingerie department.
Well, he just came over from fruit and veg and just thought he'd harangue a 13-year-old girl.
Well, that's right. He was on the floor, wasn't he? So he must have, like, they rose.
Have we checked his hard drive?
I'm not commenting on that, Julia.
I would like his hard drive checked.
Marks and Sparks has apologised, but they haven't responded to any of the other things that have been coming up for absolutely years. For example, that they allow everybody to identify into whichever changing rooms they want. Women have been complaining about this directly. I have seen a letter that was written in 2017 about this, and the response was, we are inclusive, we are an inclusive retailer. I mean, this nonsense, we are excluding women who want to have a place to get changed in peace. So they've apologised on this, but they haven't actually answered questions about, do you have any male bra fitters who call themselves women? Do you allow men into your male staff into the women's changing rooms if they identify as women? And J.K. Rowling says it's time that we vote with our wallet.
It really is. I mean, it is one of those stores that it's like John Lewis likes to do all the woke thing, and you get all the everyone's got the lanyards, and they're the whole of the month of June and usually most of July as well. I remember checking halfway through July, and their Twitter feed, their X feed still had the trans pride flag. And again, not pride flag, the trans pride flag. And they're obsessed with this, aren't they? And again, when they say they're inclusive, but as you say, not inclusive of women who want to use single-sex spaces, I can understand no man wanting to go into a women's changing room in the lingerie section for any reason that is a good reason that women would welcome there. It's a very, you're in a very vulnerable position when you are, completely naked, trying on lingerie, completely, and taking, I remember being taken to M&S when I was a teenager for my first bra fitting. It's a very, it's a mum and daughter moment. You're very vulnerable. You feel quite shy. It is something where you want sort of a kindly middle-aged lady who's been fitting bras for 13-year-olds or whatever forever, going, well, it's probably 9-year-olds now, and say, oh, what would you like? Would you like a pink one or a white one? And it should be a really lovely, warm, lovely women's moment. It's you don't want dad to take, and I know there'll be some kids who haven't got a mum and dad. I get that, but it's a moment for mums and daughters, and no, let's be honest, and I'm going to use this word, no normal man, I'm not referring to whether somebody thinks they're trans-identified or not, but no normal man who cared about a young teenage girl's feelings or concerns would approach a young teenage girl in that way. Whether they were trans or not, because they know it would be intimidating.
It just shows you that there's an incredible narcissism about this movement, that the most important thing about a person is their self-identification, and the job of everybody else is just to affirm that.
Yeah.
So obviously I don't know the man in question, but I mean, the behaviour suggests that he was thinking only about himself here. Yeah. To say the least.
On that basis alone.
To step in.
On that basis, and it is interesting because the M&S did actually write to the mother, and we understand how important this milestone is for your daughter. We're truly sorry it did not go as you hoped. We deeply regret the distress your daughter felt during her visit to our store. But the reality is, you say lots of women have been saying, look, I don't want to be behind just a curtain and then know that there could be men on either side at any point. I mean, it's not a locked curtain, is it? For goodness sake, changing rooms are by definition places that should be single sex for a reason. And by the way, 99.9% of men would rather they were single sex. They don't want to change next to a woman either. So that's very simple. The answer is we need to take our money away from M&S for this, because even though they could be doing badly on lots of their other clothing ranges, they do well on their food. But at the end of the day, everyone we know has got M&S knickers, don't they? Well, you know what? We need to stop. There are plenty of other stores that sell the same item, and often much cheaper, by the way. We should take our money away from a store that says it doesn't care about us.
I think we should write and say so too, because, you know, it's easy to get lost among all the other things that are happening, as you say, the IT problems. So, you know, if you're going to make that decision, drop them a note. Let
them know in writing and make it clear. And again, go to the changing room and say, I want to know, are men going to be allowed in this changing room? And you don't have to be a transphobe to think this, do you?
Not at all, not at all. And I mean, so many department stores have gone gender neutral in their changing rooms. Tell them about that too. It's really not just M&S. And after the court case, the Supreme Court judgment in April in For Women Scotland, the law is on our side. Single sex means single sex.
But what if they don't advertise it as single sex? They do the unisex.
No, true. They can have gender neutral changing rooms, but then, you know, tell them, say this isn't good enough for women. This is worse for women than for men. Yeah. Say so.
It's almost like there was a reason why we had single sex changing rooms for women in the first place. It's almost like there was a reason. I wonder what that could have been.
Well, Julia, there is the $1,000,000 question. I mean, I think everybody's had some sort of weird lobotomy and they've forgotten what the two sexes are.
They really have. I mean, again, it comes to the prisons. What are you quite surprised by? I mean, Vanessa Frake, who's a sensible soul, the former prison governor, making comments giving advice on prison policy to the reform about how it should be on a case-by-case basis of whether or not a trans-identifying male prisoner should be on the female prison estate. And Nigel Farage saying, you know, he'd be guided by her. I mean, I've argued with him behind the scenes about this. It seems to me to be really, really simple. If you're a man, you're a man. I don't care what operation you've done, I don't care what piece of paper you've got. You don't go into a women's prison, full stop.
I mean, I was surprised in that it is incredibly popular to simply say that men can't turn into women by saying so, by having an operation, by taking hormones, anything else. And if you want to try and get elected, that's the position you should take. But you know what? Misogyny and lack of concern for women who face male sexual violence is everywhere on the political spectrum. I don't see why reform is suddenly meant to be, you know, the great saviour of women's rights.
I think it's a middle-aged man. I'm surprised in Vanessa Frake, you know, she was a prison governor, but I think it's not. It's a middle-aged man who just like it's not been an issue for them. It's just not been an issue.
He doesn't care. I mean, I have to say, I think it's the same with Keir Starmer. I think for both of them, that this just doesn't seem an issue to them. So again, you know, it's got to be made very, very clear that what he's saying, that case by case, is extremely unpopular. You can't risk assess men like that. Most rapes are never even reported, let alone resulting in convictions.
And the rate of trans-identifying men among the sex offender category of men in prison is remarkably high. I wonder why that is. Always good to talk to you, Helen Joyce, Voice of Reason. Thank you very much. Love to hear your thoughts on that. We'll get Claire Pearsall's thoughts on that coming up in just a moment. More on the economy. This is Talk, the Hope, Common Sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Just coming up to 3 minutes past 11, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or on your connected device. Thank you so much for joining us. With you all the way till 1 o'clock. Claire Pearsall is still here as well, as always on a Wednesday, former Conservative government advisor, but we forgive her for that. And I love that you deep sigh every time I do that. But also, don't forget, if you do miss anything on the show, you can go to our YouTube page, Talk, but also my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You've got no excuses not being able to find it on YouTube. You hit subscribe and then you never have to miss a thing. Coming in this hour, we're going to talk more about Chancellor Rachel Reeves having to either increase taxes substantially this autumn to fill a £50 billion black hole, or massively cut spending, or borrow an awful lot, but that would break her fiscal rules. But wouldn't putting taxes up break some of the rules about putting taxes up on working families from the manifesto? Well, either way, things are looking very bad for her. Oh, and even worse for us, according to this new research from the economic think tank. We're going to be talking about that. Plus, almost 1 in 10 businesses have had staff quit after they were told to stop working from home. This is research by the British Chambers of Commerce. Plus, of course, an awful lot of civil servants who've been told to go back to the office suddenly find themselves calling in sick an awful lot. I'm as surprised as you are. Plus, we're going to talk more about those migrants and that 1 in, 1 out rule, which is really 17 in plus 1 out rule, possibly. Channel migrants, though, will be able to frustrate attempts to deport them into that scheme by exploiting human rights laws, according to the terms of the treaty. We're told by the government they won't be able to, except the terms of the treaty say they can. Anyway, also, pressure is building to speed up a review of whether police should routinely reveal criminal suspects' nationality and asylum status after it was revealed that it would not be completed until the autumn. Kick it into the long grass, we'll just forget about it. Not sure that is going to work. This comes as Chief Inspector of Constabulary Andy Cook warns that misinformation will spread on social media unless forces fill the void, but they will have to be consistent. So you can't just tell us when it's a white British man as opposed to someone of a different ethnicity from abroad. Probably best to be consistent, guys. We're going to talk about all of that, plenty more besides. Claire Pearsall, as I say, is still with me. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Just before I get your thoughts once again on this spending, £50 billion black hole, and indeed your thoughts on what Helen Joyce just had to say about J.K. Rowling, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Already lots of calls coming in. We'll get to as many as we can. But Rachel Reeves is going to have to either raise taxes or cut spending, or she could break her fiscal rules and borrow more, which is basically raising future taxes to fill this £50 billion black hole. That's what economists have warned her. What should she do? What do you want her to do? Try and give us a more actual, proper answer than we got from Rupert Lowe in the last half hour, with all due respect. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Had to say this bit to you. Calls to charge at the national rate. Text cost 1. Standard network rate message. Right, Claire Pearsall, what should the Chancellor do?
She shouldn't have made a promise never to raise taxes for the length of the Parliament on working people, because I think you back yourself into a corner by saying that. You never know what is going to come round the corner. But also look at what the government is spending money on. There are a lot of things that they can row back on. The amount of foreign aid being spent arguably doesn't need to be. The amount that you're handing out to your union mates, that can also stop.
Public sector pay rises.
Public sector pay rises.
The two really big ones there are net zero. Some of the public spending payments. But again, the unions got the big money, had very few members. The teachers and the nurses, when there are hundreds of thousands of them, they got far less than, say, the doctors or the train drivers, because there aren't as many of them. But again, it set a precedent. We Royal College of Nurses could be balloting more to strike now. But really, you're looking at welfare and net zero. Those are your two biggies, where you are spending hundreds of billions over those periods of years. I mean, lots of people talking about pension and the triple lock. No, that's one of the things. But for me, the number one thing you've got to be tackling right now is working age benefits. But I mean, also, if you build more houses, and by the way, I don't want the government to build the houses. Let other people build the houses. People want to buy houses. People want to sell houses. I mean, why does the government even need to be involved, frankly, other than, yes, we'll have planning permission, but let's, we've got a lot of land. We can build a load more houses. You're never going to solve welfare dependence and welfare problems if people can't afford to pay their own rent. And we're paying, what, is it 30 billion a year, give or take, on housing benefit for people right now?
It is enormous. But also, I think that by putting the burden onto businesses, you're going to stop a load of businesses from taking on people. And if you've got an unemployment list which is rapidly rising, you need to get those people back into work to be economically active. You need to...
And how do you do that?
Reduce
Carrot,
the burden.
Stick, both?
Well, I think you need to, reduce the burden on businesses. The stupid national insurance increase has just made it much more expensive.
The threshold back up?
Yeah.
Okay, that was a £25 billion. You see, they got rid of that. Rachel Reeves would say, I've now got a £75 billion black hole.
But then if more people were put back into work, and I do think, yes, carrot and stick does work, but sometimes stick needs to be used a lot more to get people out of their house and into a job. It may not be something that they actually want to go and do. We've all done jobs that we didn't really want to do.
Plenty of jobs I didn't want to do.
Exactly, but you need to be able to do that to put food on your table and look after your kids and have.
But they don't need to, because they can go on benefits, and that's.
And it shouldn't be like that. Yeah. And it's one of these things that every government struggles with. Everybody.
Well, they want to be nice, but they want to be. But again, this is the same as the parents. You go, well, I don't want to read the right act to my kid. Tough love. Tough love. Yeah. We're changing the locks in 3 weeks. You're paying rent. End of. I'm sorry,
no.
but that's more loving. That's more loving than your kid not having a job.
It certainly is, and the word no needs to be put round an awful lot more. My child heard that quite frequently from pretty much the day he was born.
One of the things that always flabbergasted me is his parents saying, "Oh, I need supermarkets to move the sweets from the till because there's so much pressure." I'm like,
don't.
What's going on? What is going on in your family, in your parenting, that you can't go? No. My kid wouldn't even have thought. I mean, do I sound really cool? She's a happy, well-functioning child.
Yes.
I just know adult. She's an adult now.
Because she's been told no.
But I just we didn't have that sort of stuff when I was younger. We couldn't afford it. There wasn't money for stuff like that, so it wasn't an issue.
But also, if I whinged when I was a kid around a shop, my mother...
Good luck with that!
Exactly. My mother would have taken me out of the shop.
There's a story in my family. I was taken into a quiet aisle. And very stern and scary words were had, and I never did it again. I tell you what, I have done this to other people's children. I know, you children, you're in the supermarket and you've got kids just whinging. You're like, oh my God, they're walking around every aisle with me, and I can't get rid of these. And a kid that's obviously having just a whingy moan, and the parents like, no, but they're not doing anything about it. They're not giving them a stern word. They're just, and they're going to give in the end. That's the worst bit. And I genuinely, I would just go up to these children and go, be quiet. And these children look at me in absolute shock. And I worked out what it is. No one has ever suggested that before. No one has actually just said, in a very firm, I wouldn't mess with me if I were you way, be quiet.
Yeah.
Parents, try it. It works. I can come round your house and do it, no problem. Harm myself out, but trust me, it does work. I think we have digressed. I think
we have.
I don't want you to be quiet when you call in. But again, Georgina, who our regular Georgina. I would love to see Georgina tackling that. Would you not have Georgina in every supermarket sorting out parents who can't sort their kids out?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you literally just sort of, Georgina, aisle 4, aisle 4, another failing parent, off you go.
My mother used to have one of those looks.
In.
My mother had a look. She didn't even need to say anything. I just got fixed with the stare. She used to be a teacher as well, so that helped.
If you clearing your throat doesn't work, something's gone wrong in your parenting. I'm going to say, and I've never hit my child. You don't need to hit you. No. You just. Anyway, Parenting 101 with Julia and Claire. We should write a book.
We should
write a book.
So
anyway,
good.
Right, we'll stop now, guys. Let's talk about the parenting of, you've got a son, I've got a daughter. They going in, first bras and all of that. I really remember being taken, to get first bra at M&S. That's where you went. So everyone goes M&S. Nice ladies give you a fitting, and it will be very nice. But a young girl being taken by her mum and being approached by at Marks and Sparks. a 6'2" man dressed as a woman, but clearly a man, who, by the way, we learned from Helen Joyce a few moments ago, didn't actually work in the lingerie department. You just came over from fruit and veg or wherever it was, to come and just say, do you need any help? She was really quite, anxious and distressed. But we've had this for years, and lots of stores do it. But M&S, you know what? You're supposed to be. You're supposed to be one of us.
Yeah.
Having men working in those changing rooms and those departments, and having men customers saying that they are women going into those changing rooms. It's unacceptable. Is J.K. Rowling right and Helen Joyce from Sex Matters right that actually we need to boycott, but we need to tell them, go into the store, tell them, write to head office and say, I will no longer buy your products, any of them, because of this policy.
And it makes me sad because I love the M&S food hall, I must admit. They do some really good stuff.
Put enough calories in something, you can make it taste good. That's their rule.
I know, but it is good. But I think that in this instance, what are they thinking? They are supposed to be the sort of the mum, the nan, the gran of lingerie buying for the first time. You don't want somebody who doesn't even work in that department just wandering over from cookware to see if a teenage girl wants any help. It's ridiculous.
Sorry. No, I'm sorry, and I'm using this word. No normal man would do that. I'm not saying I'm not saying abnormal because trans. There are plenty of people who wear what you want. I don't care. I'm not interested. No normal bloke who wasn't predatory would do that because every man, your bloke, my bloke would know that would be intimidating to a teenage girl.
Exactly.
So they wouldn't do it. So only an abnormal bloke would do it. Nothing to do with being trans, just someone who is not someone I want talking to my 12-year-old daughter. Thanks very much.
Whenever I go shopping with my son, who is a teenager, we have
he's
to
also
walk
about
through.
6'11".
He is, yes. He's very, very tall, very big. We have to walk through the lingerie department in M&S in Bluewater to get to where we need to be. Exactly. He will look anywhere else, at the floor, at the ceiling, at my back.
Every bloke's horrified by this.
Precisely. So I find it very strange behaviour.
By the way, somehow related to this, that's why I flag up that around this time tomorrow, I'm going to be talking to someone who, again, all the men in the audience are now going to pretend they've never heard of, and no one's convinced. Her name is Bonnie Blue, who seems to think that sex is an extreme sport and likes to film it and makes millions from it. 1,000 men in 24 hours, 2,000 men in 24 hours, talks about men destroying her, strangling her, goodness knows what. I'm feeling your pain there, Claire, I really am. But she's going to be on the show in the studio tomorrow. I have a funny feeling you don't want to miss that. It's going to be, shall we say, a conversation between two women who are pretty strident and open in their views. But I cannot wait to get that on air. So we'll look forward to you joining us. And yes, isn't it helpful that you just had me explain who she was to you chaps? Never heard of her. Of course you hadn't. Let's also talk about what's going on with Ukraine. Obviously, front page news recently has very much been all focused on Gaza and Israeli hostages as well. Some people bother to care about the Israeli hostages still being starved to death in those sort of tunnels. But Trump's envoy for everything, Steve Witkoff, and a golf buddy, arrived in Moscow. We understand from the Interfax Russian news agency that he did actually have a meeting with Putin face to face. It wasn't completely clear whether he would meet him face to face or not. This is ahead of Donald Trump's ceasefire deadline that he brought forward from 50 days to this Friday. His deadlines have a habit of moving in many directions. For there to be a ceasefire in Ukraine. Doesn't look like the Russians are anywhere close to having a ceasefire. They think they're on the front foot. What do you make of that?
The Russians would always think that they are right and they are behaving in the correct way and they don't need anybody else telling them that. But they are becoming incredibly isolated on the world stage. They've still got India, they've got China. I know
they're like Millwall. Everyone hates us and we don't care.
The problem is the very rich people within Russia are going to, at some point, have enough of all of this. Now, the majority of them will have moved. There are very rich people roaming across the world. But I think that most people in Russia with a substantial amount of money are going to find any further sanctions, should they be put on them, incredibly difficult.
Well, there's a difference between not letting your wife go shopping in Paris and things like that. But what we really need is these secondary sanctions he's threatened on countries like China and India. He's got ongoing talks with China to avoid their tariff, but particularly India as well, who claim to be part of sort of the civilized world, who are quite happily buying the oil and the gas at a cheap rate from Russia, funding the war against Ukraine. But then also many countries in Europe and other supposedly against civilised countries are happily buying that cheap oil and gas on and buying goods on from India. So, you know, a lot of the West is doing it as well. But we need a reality check. Stop funding the war of a murderous dictator who's, again, all these people who are terribly worried about what Israel is doing seem remarkably unbothered about what Vladimir Putin is doing to the Ukrainian people.
Because that's now left their consciousness. It's been going on for such a long time.
They changed the flag in their bio on X.
Yes, they're not bothered. It's gone on too long. It's not a very exciting mission for them anymore. But people are still dying, and I think that Ukrainians need our help as much as Israel
Absolutely.
does.
I can't believe we haven't got to the really important topic about Gary Lineker back on our TV screens, this time on ITV, in a game show dubbed a cross between I'm a Celeb and SAS Who Dares Wins. I think it sounds great. I'll watch it. I like Gary Lineker on the telly. I just don't want him giving his stupid, uninformed, ignorant, crazy political opinions when I'm having to pay his wages. So, well done, Gaz.
Yeah, I don't have to pay for him. He can go and do what he likes.
Do what you want, say what you want, have a lovely, lovely time. I just don't want to have to pay for you, and you don't have to play the victim anymore because you're very well paid and you're doing very well, and all the centrist dads love you. Well done. Gaza back on our screens. 11:18 is the time. Up next, going to talk to independent economist Julian Jessup about that £50 billion black hole that Rachel Reeves and you and I face over the next few years in the budget. What should she do? Is it raising taxes, in which case whose taxes and how much, or is it cutting spending, or is it breaking those fiscal rules and borrowing more? Love to hear your thoughts on that as well. We'll get your calls just after Julian Jessup. Number to call is 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
In the wild, they don't belong, behind bars in urban environments for us to gawp at them. We know there's enough scientific evidence to show that those animals really suffer a lot of stress. They often get obesity problems, they get various other health-related problems, and their life expectancy is far shorter than what it would be in the wild. So, there's a very good case to say actually their time has come. And a lot of these organisations that run these zoos are struggling financially in Britain and around the world. And I think this is probably another case of a zoo that's trying to hide its broader animal welfare and income problems.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back to the show. 11:22 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Delighted to welcome independent economist Julian Jessup to the show right now. Good morning to you, Julian.
Good morning.
Right, thank you so much for joining us. Well, the Chancellor, we're told, this is by the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. They are a respected independent think tank. They're saying that forget that £22 billion black hole, forget the whole £9.9 billion of fiscal headroom, whatever the hell that is in the real world, that Rachel Reeves claimed. She's actually facing a £50 billion black hole. Now, first question to you as an economist. First of all, what is that made up from and where has it suddenly come from?
Okay, well, the 50 billion has got two parts. One is an estimate of how much more she's going to be borrowing than she's supposed to do in order to balance the current budget in 5 years' time. Now, that's a little bit complicated, but it sort of underlines the difficulty of coming up with any sensible number here, because who on earth knows what's going to happen in 5 years'
That's because
time.
there are commitments on spending that have already been made, or they're factored in terms of what welfare and pay rises for public sector or whatever, and we just haven't got enough money to pay for them. So there's going to have to be more borrowing to pay for that.
Yeah, but there's loads of other moving parts in there as well. So we don't know, for example, what the level of interest rates is going to be over that period. We don't know what the level of growth, most importantly, is going to be.
I think we do. Period. I hate to tell you, Julian, I think we do know what the level is going to be. Low.
So basically, as I say, that 50 billion is two parts. There's about 41 billion there for closing the borrowing gap. Another 10 billion or so, which is to allow some fiscal headroom. That's the other number you referred to. So you want to make sure you've got a bit of a cushion in there. So the NISA has come up with this figure of 50 billion. I've got to say, though, that is frankly just guesswork. Interestingly, NISA produces these numbers every quarter. And the last forecast round in May suggested the number was even bigger. They actually said 60 billion. So nobody really knows. Ultimately, it's only the views of the Office for Budget Responsibility that matter.
Yeah, but they get everything wrong as well. I mean, the one thing you know about every single economic forecast, as the former head of the OBR once said, to a select committee of the Commons, is that you know it's going to be wrong. They're all wrong. Everything is revised. Everything is unexpected. Everything we get, even like the day before interest rates are being announced by the Bank of England, it's nearly always not what they said they thought it would be, or not. Inflation isn't whatever. They don't seem to know anything. But here's the thing: 50 billion quid. Is that real money in the sense of, say for you and me, if we had a shortfall, if we got income in and we've got outgoings committed, mortgage or whatever, a car loan we can't get out of or something, then we've got to find that money, or we literally lose our home, or we have to sell the car or whatever. Is it real tangible money?
Well, the money for that has to come from somewhere. And if we don't do anything, it'll have to come from borrowing. But that would break the fiscal rules, that would worry the markets, and that would drive up interest rates, not just for the government, but for everybody else.
Because she said these are kind of sacrosanct, these rules, that your day-to-day spending is funded by day-to-day taxation and not by more borrowing.
Yeah, actually, I think to her credit, the current fiscal rules are about as sensible as you can get. Yeah. But more importantly, it's not my view that matters, it's the view of the markets. And I think if she were to change the fiscal rules in any meaningful way, the markets would punish her very severely, just as we saw with Liz Truss in September.
But they wouldn't be punishing her, they'd be punishing us, they'd be putting up the interest rate they were demanding to lend to the government.
Let's start with her. But of course, if the government is spending more on debt interest, then that means it has to raise more money from tax or cut spending elsewhere.
Right.
And the interest rates the government pays set benchmarks for everybody else. So if the government is paying more in interest, everybody else will end up paying more interest as well.
So our mortgages
but to get to the fundamental point here, the assumption that the National Institute and others have made is that there's only three solutions to this. One is to cut spending, the next is to raise taxes, and the third is to borrow more and break the fiscal rules. What I think most people are missing is overwhelming importance of economic growth.
Yeah.
So the reason why the National Institute have come up with such a big number is they've got some pretty pessimistic forecasts in there for growth, which ironically I think will be proved right if people listen to them and raise taxes even further.
Yeah.
What we need is relentless focus on boosting growth.
But aren't the governments doing that? They're laser-like focus, relentless focus. Their number one priority is growth. They told us that before the election in July 24, and they've been telling us ever since.
Well, a couple of problems there. I mean, first of all, ever since the election, actually before it, they were saying that they wouldn't raise taxes on working people, but they've already clearly broken that manifesto commitment with the increases in employers' national insurance, which everybody recognises is a tax on jobs. So the government has very little credibility here. The second problem is that they've done a few good things to boost growth, but mostly what they've done is actually undermined growth. So the increased intervention in the labour market, for example, energy policy, the backsliding now on planning reforms, and also doing nothing to reduce the size of the state.
Well, indeed, we saw that with the backtracking on the welfare reforms, which were pitifully small anyway. If you were in charge, goodness me, I would certainly prefer that to Rachel Reeves. I think most of us listening and watching right now would. What would you do? OK, you want your relentless focus on growth. How would you get that? What spending would you cut? What taxes would you cut or raise?
OK, well, there's an awful lot in there. I mean, first of all, I would focus on what economists call supply-side reform. So that's boosting the productivity of the economy, for example, by removing lots of red tape that prevents houses being built and infrastructure being developed, those sorts of things. I would also focus on basically stopping lots of things the government is currently planning to do. So I think the Employment Rights Bill is going to be a disaster. And even the International Monetary Fund has flagged up concerns that will make the labour market less flexible and harm some of the people it's really trying to help. Have a complete rethink of energy policy. I think basically you may need to make sure that energy prices reflect all the social costs involved in using energy, including the environmental costs. But beyond that, you just leave it to the markets to decide whether it's from oil or gas or renewables.
And there isn't a single country in the world that has a booming economy that has expensive energy prices. Full stop. Ours are among the most expensive in the world.
One of the biggest single reasons why the UK economy has underperformed, particularly against the US, but also many of our peers in Europe, is our very high energy prices, particularly industrial electricity.
Yeah. OK, so you'd sort out all of that. What about welfare?
I think that needs a fundamental review. And I think it needs to be, as I say, fundamental. It can't just be trying to find a few billion here or a few billion there, which is the mistake the government has been making, because sort of scrambling to find last-minute savings based on a rather dodgy OBR forecast, I think is undoubtedly not making the right choices. So there are clearly some people who are slipping through the net.
And what about tax? There's a lot of talk about, we have to fill this funding black hole, by raising tax. I'm going to guess you think that actually we would do better by cutting tax.
At least simplifying tax, I think, maybe is almost more important than cutting tax. We've got three problems with the tax levels at the moment. One is that the tax level is too high. The second is that the system is too complicated. So we need to get rid of a lot of distortions in the tax system. And third, and almost as important, we need to provide certainty and stability. So lots of companies have put off investing in the UK because they simply don't know what the tax regime is going to be in a few years' time. So the North Sea oil and gas is a perfect example of that, a so-called one-off windfall tax on energy profits that is constantly being expanded, extended and raised.
Just a little bit of certainty, a little bit of confidence, but you're not going to get growth without confidence. We're not going to get confidence without growth. Aren't we caught in a vicious circle?
Yes, I mean, it's one of the numbers of doom loops that we're falling into. I think the one thing we can say with certainty is that if you just raise taxes even further, then you weaken the economy and end up undermining the public finances. So we're back in the same place. The
trouble is, what do we all expect Rachel Reeves to do in the autumn? Raise taxes.
Well, that's exactly the problem. I've seen and heard absolutely nothing from the government suggesting that they're going to break away from this doom loop. They're stuck in this form of Treasury orthodoxy that I'm afraid I think the National Institute is replicating, that the only solution is to either cut spending, raise taxes or to bend the fiscal rules. I think you need to step back from that and focus on growth instead.
OK, really good to talk to you. Julian Jessup, an independent economist there. Great to get his thoughts. Claire Pissell, you were jotting a lot down. That's was I during that.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And I think that things like planning reforms, you don't necessarily think of when you're talking about the economy.
Yeah, because we don't need the government to build the houses.
No.
We need them allow other people who want to build houses to sell houses to people who want to buy houses.
So take away the red tape aspect of it, make it easier for infrastructure, because that's the one thing we are terrible at.
But even we put a new roof on our conservatory conservatory that was already there, and that took about 6 months to get approval.
And it is
painful.
Absolutely painful. But even big projects, we can't even manage those. If you can't fix a roof on a conservatory, you're never going to build a new motorway or a new train line, are you? So I think that was really important. But also the going for growth, looking at what the government are doing.
We are not going to get growth. This government,
No.
Rachel Reeves, you just look at markets and everybody, and you look at Rachel Reeves, that nothing about that is going to deliver growth. They know that, we know that, everyone knows that.
They do, and simplifying the tax system, this is the one thing I wish any government would look at in this country. It is so complicated, so many different ways of taxing you. It's not it's not a surprise that companies don't want to come in and invest from the outside because they look at the UK and just go, it's a bit of a basket case when it comes to tax. It's very complicated. I don't think we'll bother.
Okay, right. Really interesting. Thank you very much indeed. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We'll take them up next. 0344 499 1000. Don't forget to text and message in on X as well. We'll get to as many of your messages as we can. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you very much indeed for your company. Claire Pearce also with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get to your messages coming in thick and fast about Rachel Reeves now facing a £50 billion black hole with her finances. Are taxes going to go up? Is spending going to have to be cut? Are we just going to borrow more? So that's just more taxes going up in the future. What would you want to happen? Susie says a good start would be to stop the boats and cut foreign aid completely. It makes sense. She should cut net zero, says Jane. Yasmin says she'll do both, raise taxes and sneakily cut services. Better if she resigns. Yeah, but Yasmin, Rachel Reeves resigns. Realistically, you're not going to get anything any better out of this lot. Stephen says, and she's bad. Stephen says they'll have to freeze income tax bans for a couple of years. Well, they were already planning to do that, weren't they? So basically more and more people on really very average incomes who are struggling are going to be paying the 40% rate of tax, a higher rate of tax, which is extraordinary. That used to be for people who were like properly well off. I mean, properly well off. And that, again, they think people won't notice. People will notice. John says, raise taxes. It's in Labour Party genes around the world. It's the left's only answer to everything. Raise taxes, punish the middle classes and business owners. Trouble is, business owners are the people who employ everybody else, aren't they? Well, again, not... This is the thing, Claire, isn't it? Not the people who work in the public sector who are the Labour Party voters.
Well, exactly. And these are the same people who are now taking an awful lot of time off sick, because they've got a very generous package of sick pay, because they don't want to go back into the office, and they're very protected. So they don't understand.
We're going to talk about that in a moment as well. Alexander says, hosting illegal immigrants at a 4-star hotel with meals and freebies paid for us is absolutely crazy and a waste of taxpayers' money. Get rid of that first. I have a funny feeling my first caller on this issue today thinks this too. Kimberly is in Kent. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello there. Hi.
Hello. Very nice to hear from you. What do you want to say? What should Rachel Reeves do?
Give my daughter a Saturday job. She's 9. I think she'd do a great job. Help her with her maths, I think.
She'd probably help her with a match in chess as well.
No, what I was going to say regarding the with the money that they're trying to save, I just did a quick calculation. And I'm no maths guru, but
that's all right. Neither is Rachel.
Yeah. This £50 a week they allegedly get. 25,000 migrants at £50 a week would save 65 million a year. And I don't mind this tax thing. It will cripple me. I'm a salon. I'm a small salon. I haven't taken any trainees this year like we normally do. We normally take at least 2 or 3. We've not taken any on this year.
Why not?
Yet, because of the threshold for the NI.
So you used to be able, you weren't paying national insurance, you weren't paying, presumably minimum wage was lower as well.
That's right, yeah.
And again, so that's the thing. You see, these people in government and the civil service, they've never run a small business. You're not exploiting people. You just can't afford to take people on who, let's face it, are pretty useless for the first few months. You're giving them a chance.
I've got Donna, who's in her 60s. She's been working for us at front of house for the last 25 years. We've cut her hours down to 1 day a week.
Yeah.
Because she's just reception. She's not what you call income producing as such.
Yeah.
And just can't afford to carry it. And Donna lives on her own in a park home. We're her life.
Yeah.
And it's devastating to see.
But you can't afford it. So in the hair salon. So I mean, are you losing business? Is there are people cutting back on the treats of having cut and blow dry or having their hair dyed because people are trying to make their own ends meet?
Yeah, they're going a bit longer between visits. And we've got quite a varied price range. So it's our younger, lower-end stylists that are busier now than the girls with more experience who are just charging a little bit more.
Yeah.
Definitely a different business model to how it used to be when I first started.
And this will be the equivalent of this will be in every small business, whatever the service, across the whole country. You're not taking people on, cutting back hours, customers cutting back. And, of course, those people, they then haven't got money to spend in the economy, so they cut back. And it's as lots of our guests have pointed out, it's a vicious sort of doom loop. It just goes down and down and down. What's the answer?
People on the outskirts. It's the people on the outskirts that are getting, that are having to take the brunt of it. The support staff behind every business.
Yeah.
The people that are helping, the business to stay on its feet. I think for me, the biggest thing they've got to attack is migration.
That's the number one thing. We can't deal with anything else until we deal with that.
Not anymore. It can't. We're an open country. We'll help as much as we can. But why not just put the brakes on for 5 years? Let us get ourselves back on our feet, and then we can look at it.
Yeah. Also, not just get ourselves back on our feet, but get some of our young people and say you can't. To employers, you can't import cheaper labour from abroad, whether legal or illegal. You're going to have to train up young people here in Britain already.
Yeah, my stepson's moved out to Dubai. He moved out there 2 Novembers ago. He's having a great time. Fantastic life out there. He's looking after himself financially.
What does he do for a living? Do you mind me asking?
He's only 26. He's just started his own AI marketing company.
He doesn't need to be in Britain to do that. Not paying any tax out there.
But I think he still would. It's not about the tax. It's just about the opportunity and the state of the country. It's incomparable.
That is so telling. Kimberly, you've covered so much there, and I think so many people would just be nodding. Claire and I just nodding along to all of that. And again, the stress levels on you, your employer. You care about the people you employ. You want to help young people. You care about the people who've been there, for years on reception, and just feeling like you're just caught in a bind. You're the backbone of the nation. That's the thing. You are the backbone of the nation. Thank you so much for your call. It breaks my heart, Claire. And that's going to be replicated a million times around the country. And there you are. There's your lack of economic growth.
Exactly. And it's people like Kimberly who would be taking on apprentices to learn how to do hair or
But she's not a charity.
Salon.
She can't take on people she can't afford.
Absolutely. So you've got young people who aren't going to get that kind of training, which they need. They need to learn from the bottom up if you're in that industry. Yeah. They're not going to have that opportunity. Kimberly has got to reduce down a valued member of staff to 1 day a week because she can't afford.
She's probably going to rely on benefits at that point.
Exactly. And what is she doing? She's paying more and more tax. She's paying more and more rent on a property, I assume, for her business. All of those additional costs, and people are then going longer in between treatments because they don't have the cash to spend.
Yeah,
It's just absolutely heartbreaking.
I know, and it's so predictable. So predictable. It's madness. Let's go to Francis, who's in Doncaster and wants to talk about M&S. We're talking about J.K. Rowling saying, you know, we should be boycotting M&S if they're not going to provide single-sex changing rooms, particularly when you're having a bra fitting. Francis, thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Yes, it's lovely to get through to you. And I normally can't get through to talk during the day, but this is great.
Well, we appreciate you calling more than you appreciate coming on air. What do you want to say about this M&S thing? Do you think we should be boycotting M&S?
Well, yeah, I think it's crazy. The trans madness still rumbles on, does it not? It's utterly absurd. And I think it's high time that the Supreme Court, if it is a Supreme Court, is actually listened to, and these damn fools stop messing about with the basic fabric of society.
And this is it, isn't it? Because we all thought things would change Supreme Court. But again, you know, M&S and lots of other stores, they can get away with it by simply saying, well, these are unisex changing rooms, so what's the big deal? Well, we don't want that. Yeah. I'm thinking better than actually, you know, just writing a letter and saying you're boycotting M&S. I think we should all go to M&S and we should all pick up lots of items and we go to M&S and we go to the front counter and then we go, oh, I've changed my mind because I disagree with your policy on trans. I think we should be really, really upfront, peacefully militant, if you know what I mean, about it, and make it really, really clear.
And for the believers amongst us, it says quite clearly in the book of Genesis, male and female created he them. There is not, to the best of my knowledge, a proviso that says, oh, and thou may changest thy mind whenever thou feelest like it. No. You play the hand you dealt, baby.
Yeah, it really is. It's true. And again, for me, I mean, Claire and I as mums, you know, our first biggest horror was the idea when Helen Joyce explained a little while ago that it was a member of staff, he was 6'2" bloke, dressed as a woman. Again, that's still a bit, I mean, feel free to do what you want, but it is still a bit strange for a lot of people, especially for like a 12-year-old girl. But coming up, he didn't even work in the lingerie department and he went up to this girl, for goodness sake.
Guy go to work in a frock anyway.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. It's all... Do what you like in your own home, but keep it there, eh? You know.
That's kind of what people used to do, isn't it? But there we are. Francis, thank you for that. A voice of quiet Middle Britain reason. Yes. But then you're saying it's just like, you know, I'm not even bothered if he wants to wear a dress at work. I mean, I'm not bothered. Where would you know, as long as it's within the uniform rules and things. But it's just the whole thing's just weird that people have got to a point where they think this is normal, because it's not normal in terms of men dressed as a woman in the lingerie department approaching each other. So I'm sorry. Yeah. We used to arrest people who did things like that, and I'm sorry. And any man who cared about a young teenage girl being so anxious, you know, going for her first bra fitting, wouldn't approach her. He just wouldn't. It's the end of the matter. It's the end of that for me. Let's go to one more call. Squeeze it in. John is. Oh, look at you. John's in the Dordogne. How are you in the Dordogne then today, John?
Very well.
Yeah, I bet you are. She said slightly bitterly.
Me and you have dived together, Julia.
Have we?
Yes, in the Red Sea about 10 years ago.
Oh my goodness! Do you know, I just did that again. I managed to talk my husband into doing it. Well, there we are.
Where did you go?
Oh, we went off Hurghada to the Red Sea, middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
We want to dive, living aboard a boat. But yeah, there's nothing like a holiday where you have to get up at 5:30 every morning to go on a first day.
Were there any sharks?
There really were not. We saw a couple.
I know.
So this is really boring for everyone else. Apologies. We should do this off air. John, lovely to hear from you. Right, what do you want to say quickly, because we've run out of time now?
Besides the fact that Starmer won't do it, there is an easy way.
Yeah.
Ferries, old ferries on the 12-mile line. Great big banners across them.
We're talking about migration here now, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then just bring their boats to there.
Yeah.
On the boat when it's full, sail it down to RAF Gibraltar, because it is an RAF base first and foremost.
Yeah.
And off they go home.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose we could, but I think Gibraltar might be a bit unhappy about that.
They wouldn't see them, because what you do is you just pull into the jetty there, and I've dived that as well, and you go up the steps onto the runway, waiting aeroplanes.
Yeah.
Go.
I mean, I'd love it if it did work. Claire, who used to work in the Home Office, is looking a little bit less convinced. John, thank you for that. Carry on with your diving. See you at the 30 metres with a hammerhead shark sometime again. Thank you very much. 11:46 is the time. This is Talk. Up next, we are going to be talking to Danny Shaw, the Home Affairs commentator, about this, we've talked a lot about migrants, but also the sort of two-tier policing and whether or not police should tell us if someone has been arrested or even charged for a crime and what their immigration status is. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
In the wild, they don't belong, behind bars in urban environments for us to gawp at them. We know there's enough scientific evidence to show that those animals really suffer a lot of stress. They often get obesity problems, they get various other health-related problems, and their life expectancy is far shorter than what it would be in the wild. So, there's a very good case to say actually their time has come. And a lot of these organisations that run these zoos are struggling financially in Britain and around the world. And I think this is probably another case of a zoo that's trying to hide its broader animal welfare and income problems.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 11:49 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, joined right now by Home Affairs commentator Danny Shaw. He's a former advisor to Vet Cooper, the Home Secretary, before she was in office, of course, and he joins us right now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us next. Well, look, lots to talk about at home. It kind of relates to the migrant issue, which we've been talking about an awful lot lately, as you well know. And this is about the sort of two-tier claims from police when they decide to give us or not give us information about a suspect's identity, whether they've been arrested or whether they've been charged. And we have this all over Axel Rudy Cabana, post Southport, and this void of information which then gets filled sometimes by bad actors online, but also the issue of a reform councillor in Warwickshire accusing the police of basically deliberately withholding information about two suspects who've been charged in relation to the alleged rape of a 12-year-old girl, and the fact that they have asylum seeker status, and that information was withheld until he put it into the public domain. Tell us, what is going on here, and what are the rules?
Well, there are two main rules, Julia. The first is the contempt of court rules, which you will obviously be aware of, which you have to be very careful about the information that you release after a suspect is arrested, actually, but particularly after they're charged, so as not to prejudice any future proceedings and a trial. That's the first thing. Releasing the nationality or ethnicity of a suspect won't really infringe the contempt of court rules, I should say. The second thing is police guidance about the information that they release. And the current guidance when someone is arrested suggests that police should reveal that person's age and rough location where they're from. When they're charged, then their name, their date of birth, and where they live can be released. There's nothing to stop police revealing someone's nationality or ethnicity. And in some cases, they do reveal nationality, particularly in terrorism cases. That's very common practice for them to do that, to say whether they're British or whether they're from abroad.
But you could argue, why is it relevant?
Exactly. I mean, I think the question that the police would say is that this isn't relevant information to the alleged offence and to the proceedings.
But then neither is the age, and yet we get to know someone's age.
Well, exactly. I suppose that there's a point at which you want to try and give a rough profile of someone, and also if someone's got a common name, then revealing their age and their location will help pin them
John
down.
Smith of the High Street, 52,
Exactly.
as opposed to John Smith of the Long Street. But there's been quite a lot of talk about this two-tier that when, for instance, there are the allegations, obviously still sub judice, it hasn't come to court yet, of a man whose car basically hit a lot of people in Liverpool. Information came out during a parade. Information came out very, very quickly that this was a white British man who was born locally, and yet then you say, well, hold on a minute, so why don't we get the same information about someone if they're not white or if they're not born in Britain? And well, it's actually he's something like his 18-year-old or something, counsellor in Nuneaton in Warwickshire, pointing out that everyone locally kind of knew that the two men who had been arrested in relation to an alleged rape of a 12-year-old girl were asylum seekers living in an asylum hotel, but that information wasn't put out by the police. And again, that's where you kind of create that big void, don't you? But we know there's been two issues. So one is we've got Andy Cook. He's His Majesty's Chief Inspector of a Constabulary, and he says basically, and also David Gauke, the former Justice Secretary, have spoken in support of police being more transparent. But there's concerns that Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, your old boss, basically says, look, we're not going to do this on an ad hoc basis. We don't want to pressure the police on this. We've got a review into this, and we're going to wait until they decide what information should be given out and in what circumstances. But that's not going to report back till the autumn, and the pressure is kind of brewing in a long, hot summer for that information to be given out sooner.
Well, I mean, I agree. The sooner we get this cleared up and we get some consistency, the better. My view is that in all cases where police are naming someone who's been charged, they should say their nationality so that there's no allegations of two-tier justice, there's no allegations of a cover-up or a conspiracy. That's the position we need to get to. I think the difficulty is you've got 43 police forces in England and Wales, plus Police Scotland, Police Service of Northern Ireland, British Transport Police, etc. There needs to be consistency. So to get all of those bodies on board and to get approved guidance will take a bit of time. That's probably the delay, but I understand Andy Cook's frustration about that, and I agree. We've got to get it sorted out. The autumn is only next month.
There is that, isn't there? There is that.
Sooner.
I mean, but it's interesting. I think knowing someone's nationality is very relevant. I'm not entirely sure why ethnicity should be. I mean, by that I think we're thinking of race, but I suppose ethnicity is someone, they could be white British or white Polish, I don't know. But immigration status, would that be relevant? Look, as much as I would like to know every bit of information I can on these stories, because I think it is relevant when, families are saying we don't want asylum hotels in our, wherever we live, and we're aware of allegations, whether proven in court yet or not, but allegations of girls being sexually assaulted or raped and women being harassed, any other criminality that's been alleged. We want people to be talking openly about it and not waiting 2 years for a court case to come to fruition. But in terms of having had legal training as a journalist, would that be relevant information in most cases?
Well, there's nothing to stop that information from being revealed, even though it may not be relevant. But there is such a debate and such concern about immigration at the moment, and allegations that sex offenders are more likely to be foreign nationals and so on.
I think the stats prove that.
Etc. I'm not sure that they do prove that, but that's another. That's another
per
debate.
capita for the I mean, Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, seems very clear about this. Certainly in London.
I think you have to be careful about those statistics and where they're from and what they include, and they also underestimate the population of foreign nationals in London. Therefore, the proportion is probably likely to be lower than you realise, because actually you're drawing from a bigger pool. But that's a separate debate. Look, I think we've got to get to a position whereby this is routine. It becomes so routine that it's not so talked about, and it doesn't become part of allegations of a cover-up or a conspiracy.
Well, that's interesting. You say it's routine, but the reason why a lot of people suspect that we don't know, for instance, the immigration status or the nationality of people committing certain ranges of crimes is not routinely given out, and that data has not been kept. We're often told the grooming gangs, this percentage were of, say, Pakistani origin, but or joint or heritage, but we just don't know about another 30%. It's like, yeah, you did know about another 30%. You join the local library, they ask for your ethnicity. They absolutely know, the police and the authorities, whether someone is a British or a foreign national and what colour skin they are and what country they're from. They do know all that stuff, but they don't give that information out because they think that we'll all go and riot because we won't like the answers we get. That's why.
Political correctness absolutely came into it, particularly with the grooming gangs, and there has been a concern. I think Warwickshire is probably one of them in that particular case that you talked about, where the police probably thought, well, why is this relevant? And if we release this information, there may be unrest, there may be a disturbance, and so on. But we've got to get to a position where we can't hide.
It needs to be normalised and routine and again consistent. Danny Shaw, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Claire Pearsall, former Home Office advisor. Do we have a right to know these things? Is it right that we do know?
I think it is. I think that we need a consistent approach to it. So I think the public do have a right to know if somebody is in their community, who they are, what age range you're looking at, and whether they are here legally or not. I actually do think that's important.
If you don't keep that information, there's a lot of targeted policing. We often hear about stop and search aimed at if one particular group of young men or women are committing certain knife crimes or drug crimes, they're the people who are going to be targeted. I always love the fact that I'm being searched for a bottle of water or a bomb. Big issue with middle-aged women travelling for a weekend in Seville, bombing planes. I mean, feel free to waste my time targeting me. But the reality is police do target people because they're more likely to be committing crimes. Am I wary walking past a bunch of pensioners on the corner of the street? No, I'm not. Am I wary walking past a bunch of hooded teenagers, male, female, of any ethnicity? Exactly. Yes, I am. Yeah. We know what we're talking about. And you can't target people if you don't keep the correct figures. Correct. Another reason why you shouldn't claim that a crime committed by a man is a crime committed by a woman just because he says he's a woman and he's put a wig on and a pair of fake boobs. I mean, the same reason. You need to know who is committing crimes to try and prevent those crimes. And if it is asylum seekers, if it is foreign nationals, maybe we should have a debate about that.
Precisely.
That would be a good idea.
If you have the information, you can deal with it.
If the information isn't uncomfortable, they wouldn't want us to know, would they? But there we are. They'd be happy for us to know. 11:59 is the time. We're coming up to the top of the hour. Lots more to come. Mark Littlewood up next. And don't forget, tomorrow we're going to be talking to Bonnie Blue. I know you don't know who she is at all, do you? This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon and welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. If you just tuned in, where have you been? Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or in your connected device, great to have your company. Claire Pistol also still with me, former Conservative government advisor. We lock the doors, we won't let her out until 1, usual rules. Don't forget, if you've missed anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing, and go to our You Talk YouTube page as well. Just a reminder, tomorrow we'll be talking to Bonnie Blue on the show. She's going to be live in the studio. Not heard of her? Gents, you're not very convincing. She's basically OnlyFans, well, now off OnlyFans, model, if we call her that. She's quite happy to use the word prostitute, she says, who makes a hell of a lot of money from basically turning sex into an extreme sport. 1,000 men in a day, 2,000 men in a day. Basically do whatever you want with her, she says to these men who are complete strangers, while she monetizes the videos of those images. Is this female empowerment? Is this what feminism is all about? Will the suffragettes be cheering her on from their graves? I'd love to hear your thoughts after I speak to her tomorrow, but you'll have to tune in to have a listen and a watch, and no doubt that will do rather well on the YouTube page. But I'd love to. I've just told you who she is. Now you can turn to your wife and say, oh, her. Yeah, I'd heard of her. Yeah. Okay, guys. Anyway, I think it's going to be an interesting conversation because, 57-year-old mum meets Bonnie Blue. So can't wait to see her. Can't wait to get your reaction to what she has to tell me tomorrow. Anyway, coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about Chancellor Rachel Reeves' £50 billion black hole. Welcome your calls on that. Also going to be talking about the Rwanda deal. Boris Johnson has welcomed that deal done by the US to deport hundreds of illegal migrants to Rwanda, because he was the original architect of that Rwanda deal. Hopefully going to be speaking to the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp in the next half hour as well. Now, I'm not sure that will come up. Scrapped by Keir Starmer, never actually got off the ground, literally. No planes ever left the ground for it. But that accommodation that we all paid for, about to be used by the Americans to house their own deportees. Well done, everyone. Plus, we're going to be talking about the rise in anti-Semitic incidents following Bob Villan's chants of death to the IDF at the Glastonbury Festival, broadcast on the BBC iPlayer. And we're going to be talking about Bill Clinton, the former US president, and his wife Hillary, former Secretary of State, both being subpoenaed by a US Congressional Committee as part of an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities. That's all coming up. Claire Pistol, as I say, is still here. Just before we get to our next guest, talking obviously still about this £50 billion black hole that Rachel Reeves has got, asking our audience what should she do to deal with the £50 billion black hole identified by the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. Is it cutting taxes? Is it or raising taxes? We know that's what Labour will come to. Many people are saying cutting taxes, boosting the economy to get growth. Is it cutting spending? Is it borrowing more, breaking her fiscal rules? I'd love to know from you what you would do. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. If you want spending cuts, what should they be? If you think tax cuts or tax rises, tell us what. Give us a call, as I say, 0344 499 1000. Text 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. And of course, calls are charged at the national rate, and text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Claire, what would you do if you were in her position?
I would actually reduce taxes. I would reduce the burden on businesses. You want growth. That's what's going to get your economy going again. I would look at entrepreneurs as the bastions of this country rather than the people that you want to hide away because you don't like it.
Yeah, a bit ashamed of us. Yeah. I'm not an entrepreneur, are we kidding?
And I would remove the word wealth tax from anybody's vocabulary because that doesn't work either. So I'm so pleased that Rachel Reeves is going to take all of that into account. She's going to enact all of the suggestions
She always tells me, she always listens to you.
I bet she does.
Well, I wonder if she'll be listening to my next guest, Mark Littlewood. He's the Director of Popular Conservatism and joins us now. Mark, I've got a funny feeling she does the exact opposite of anything you say, and that's a bit of a worry for all of us, isn't it?
It is a bit, isn't it, Julia? Good afternoon.
Good
I mean,
afternoon.
we can argue about how deep a hole Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer found themselves in when they came to office just a bit more than a year ago. But what we can't argue about is however deep that hole is, they kept digging. So we definitely know that the black hole now is measurably bigger by many billions than what they inherited.
Yeah, although no one really knows how big. I mean, the National Institute says 50 billion, but apparently they said 60 billion last month. It's going to change with the wind, isn't it?
Yeah, as Ronnie Reagan said, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and before you know it, you're talking about real money, aren't you? But we know it's problematic. I don't think there's any economist who thinks that barring some miraculous black swan event that the public finances are going to return to balance, if you like, automatically because of a fair wind.
Yeah. And if there is a black swan event, it's probably going to be in the opposite direction and make things worse, as we saw with the Ukraine war with lockdown and the COVID and all of that. I mean, you know, exactly. things that you don't predict tend to be the bad things rather than we've suddenly discovered a wonderful cheap energy that only Britain can have, and now we're a booming economy. I don't think that's happening in the next couple of years.
No, you're quite right, Julia, and governments don't tend to make any kind of contingency provisions on that side of the ledger.
She's got £9.9 billion fiscal headroom, has she not?
Well, conceivably, if everything had stayed the same. But as I say, in terms of contingencies, that's not enough to deal with a pandemic or a banking crisis or a war, is it? So what's to be done? And I think you outlined the three options that any government faces. You try and get more revenue in, you try and stop spending being as high as it is, or you borrow more. I actually think it's only the middle of those three, that's to say spending, which is now a credible option. The problem we've now got with taxes is that we have effectively taxed the British economy to the maximum. And if you start to dial up rates in any sort of way, whether you wanted to put yet another rise on national insurance contributions, whether you want to have a tax on millionaires, whether you want to dial up beer duty or tobacco duty, pick whatever one you want. The problem is you probably won't raise any more revenue and you might raise less revenue because people down tools or leave the country or retire early, all the rest of it. So we have turned the tax dial, not just under this government, I have to concede under the Conservatives as well, to the absolute maximum. There's no further for it to go. You'll blow up the system if you try to dial that higher. Borrowing more, I think, would be extraordinarily dangerous. We now have higher gilt rates, that's to say the cost of government borrowing, because we're not seen as a particularly safe bet, has gone up and up and up.
We're going to have to go to the payday lenders, aren't we, and pay those comedy rates, and then they're going to be sending around the the men with the tattoos and the booklet saying you haven't paid. You haven't paid, Mrs. Reeves.
Probably not quite as bad as relying on loan sharks yet, Julia, to keep the country afloat, but we're heading in that direction.
Yeah.
And we are now spending more just on servicing our debt than we are spending on the entire education budget.
Yeah.
And so if people are less willing to lend us money because they can't really see how Britain's ever going to balance the books, they demand a higher premium on every pound.
And this is the thing, Italy pays a lower interest rate on their debt than we do. That should be a bit of a neon red flashing sign that something's not right. And as you say, look, you can keep on raising tax rates, but you're not going to see extra tax coming in. As we've seen this, all these million, and you can be judgy about it as much as you want, but if the millionaires and billionaires leave, they're not paying tax here, and then we really are in a much deeper hole. As you say, even just ordinary people, ordinary incomes, you're working for that promotion and that pay rise, and then 40% of that pay rise because you suddenly become a higher rate taxpayer when you are struggling to pay your bills and worrying about putting petrol in the car, and then you're paying 40% in tax plus national insurance. People are just going to say, well, I won't bother. So at the end of the day, we are never going to deal with this if we still are spending so much in terms of government spending, not just on debt, we've got to deal with that, but also, crucially, welfare. This is the really, really, really big thing we've got to tackle. Net zero, welfare, and all of that. There are just huge sums of money that are going out, not just to pensioners in terms of pensions, but also the working age people of this country who are either not working, on sickness benefits, or working a couple of days a week, and we are subsidising their entire life.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we are going to have to find some very serious spending reductions, and we need a proper debate about where we're going to find them. And every time you want to dial something up, like, for example, defence spending, which I'm quite pleased we're committed to trying to grow, but that makes it even more important that you find reductions elsewhere. And if you were to look at overall government spending, if you combine welfare spending, including pensions, health and education, you're getting on to about 2/3 of the government budget.
Yeah.
So it's extremely difficult to find major savings elsewhere. You could close down the Arts Council, for example.
But you can tackle inefficiencies and waste and a bit of that, but it doesn't really touch the sides, does it?
So unless you're willing to take a long, hard look at welfare, health and education, or at least one of those three.
Well, we don't really want to cut education. I mean, I'd rather we spent more on education.
Well, then in that case, you're going to have to cut welfare by even more. So that's fine.
Fine by me.
You can decide I think there's a genuine and honest political debate to be had about what our priorities are. But the problem we've got at the moment is everything is a priority. Yes. And if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. I mean, I think, in rough and ready terms, we've got to very quickly find government savings of about £100 billion a year. So that would start to get us back into balance. It would give us a little bit of a buffer, not much.
So this
long-term future.
The government sort of welfare £5 billion savings. I mean, that was a joke anyway. It doesn't. Again, this is like someone saying, "Well, I've got no money. I want to save to buy a home, but I'm going to cut down and not have a Starbucks every day." It's not going to make a difference.
No, exactly right. The surgery required is now enormous. And to stretch that medical analogy, essentially, for 25 years now, we've been borrowing beyond our means. We have not faced up to this for 25 years. And if you allow an illness to go on and on and on for 25 years, it's a lot worse at the end of it than if we'd nipped it in the bud at the start. We've not
absolutely
since 2001.
I'd also want to ask you about this classic story. This is like one in 9 firms say that they have seen staff leave because they've been asked to stop working from home. And this is also the civil services sickness rates have risen after staff were they say forced back to the office. 3 days a week, 2 days a week. But people basically say, I'm going to go off sick. I simply won't agree to a job. And that's all very well. A lot of them might think they can get away with that. But at the end of the day, more and more businesses are saying, this productivity thing is not happening while you lot are all sitting at home, brackets, walking the dog when you're pretending to be on a Zoom. So but what do you make of both of those stats?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit horses for courses.
Well, you're working from home now, aren't you?
I'm working from home now. The staff that I work with are dotted around the country. Actually, an error I made was to invest in getting some office space in central London, and we never used it. So I've shut the office. It was a waste of time. It depends on the sort of company that you're running or the enterprise you've got. I would have thought civil servants, you would think the default is they should be 5 days a week in the office because you're working on big projects with a large number of other people that require quite a lot of face-to-face discussion. So if I were to laser focus in on a profession where I would have thought 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, you should be at your desk, the civil services, I think, would be pretty close to the top of that list. But look, companies should compete on this, really.
Yes.
I mean, you said 1 in 9, 1 in 10 are moving on because there aren't flexible working hours. Well, lots of people move on because they can get a better salary elsewhere. I want employees looking around for the best package, which will be a mixture of how much you're paid, but also how flexible your employer is. That's fine. That's great. That's competition.
And it's up to private companies.
Types of business. Exactly.
Well, again, if they say, look, we don't care, we're getting the best people and we're going to offer you all this, you can work from the beach, we don't care, but we think you're so good. That's fine. I don't care. Those companies can do that. The trouble is, of course, a lot of them are finding it's not working. Even the Googles and everyone else over the years went, do you know what? We'd like everyone back in the office, talking to each other, training the young people, having meetings face to face, and creating that team spirit. But there is a knock-on effect for everyone else, because if people aren't in an office and they're sitting at home, the delivery drivers do well with deliveries and everything, and the Zoom company does well. But actually, the bus drivers, the taxi drivers, the local shops, the local restaurants, the local sandwich bar, there's an awful lot of our economy that is based on people leaving their homes occasionally.
Yes, it's as if we're still in lockdown, isn't it, Julia? We haven't actually got over the fact that we're no longer in a COVID lockdown, got so used to doing what we could at home. We thought that was the new normal. It's not the new normal. As I say, I think we should be open-minded about this. If you're, I don't know, a writer, and you're just ploughing your own furrow, or
Yeah.
you file a column for a newspaper
Yeah.
each day expressing your thoughts. It seems to me you can just as easily do that from your desk at home as
Yeah,
a desk
but
at
there's
work.
a
But
different
vast
kind of
numbers
working.
work
Yeah.
require you to be in close proximity to large numbers of other people, to
Exactly.
have conversations with them, to make plans with them, to see the whites of their eyes. And I would think that is particularly true of the public sector.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can see because we've had flatlining productivity in the public sector for the last 20 years, so something's definitely going wrong, and I'm not sure them all sitting on sofas at home is working out. Mark Littlewood, always good to talk to you. He's the Director of Popular Conservatism. Coming up, we're going to take a quick break. Just a quick thought from Claire Pearson on all of that. Look, you do some working from home. I write my song column at home. I don't have a desk in the office. We hot desk here. Literally, I don't have a desk here.
But I think that...
Unless I'm here.
Some people are capable of doing it, but I wouldn't want to spend all my time doing it because I quite like to speak to people occasionally.
But particularly young people as well.
Yeah.
Like, when do they meet people? It's tragic, utterly tragic.
Yeah.
Right, well, we're going to take a wee break. Up next, we are going to be talking to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. He's been out on a boat on the Channel. I'm wondering if he's going to be claiming asylum later. We'll find out. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
We have far too much.
We've asked the Home Office how these returns are actually going to take place. Are people going to be bussed over, for example? And they've not told us, they've refused to say. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it is going to be, they say they're going to keep it balanced. I mean, how they're going to do that remains to be seen. How it's going to be exactly one in, one out, we don't know. But yeah, I mean, people, and for those people that are in France, if they've already tried to come across the Channel unsuccessfully, they're not going to be eligible for that. So that's still a huge number of thousands of people still currently in France that still want to come to the UK but aren't eligible for that scheme.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:21 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Delighted to be joined right now by Chris Philp, who's the Shadow Home Secretary. A very good afternoon to you. Good. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon,
Oh,
Julia.
we've got you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Right. You've been having...
I'm on the English Channel.
Right, quick out. Now, stop. We've got a bit of a delay, so you have to wait for me to finish the question, and I'll wait for you. Just to clarify, you are on a boat in the English Channel. Let's play, before when we get that line up, let's play a quick video of what you have been doing today.
The government announced yesterday they had a new deal with France supposed to stop boats crossing the channel, so I thought I'd come out here and see what's going on. I'm on the English Channel, probably about 7 or 8 miles off Calais, and behind me you can see a French warship, and just next to it is a dinghy full of illegal immigrants. The French making absolutely no attempt whatsoever to stop it. They've been shadowing it for the last 3 hours. It's about 2 hours from British waters. They're going to be arriving in the UK later on today, so quite clearly the government's claims to be fixing this with their new deal are not working. The evidence is right behind me.
Well, very vivid imagery there. Chris, oh gosh, now we've just lost Chris Philp's line. Yeah, not such good lines. If we had this many years back, we had a reporter out there. It turns out, yeah, really bad line. Chris Philp, while we get him on the line, Claire Pistol is here, former Conservative Government advisor in the Home Office. You were there when he was actually Home Office Minister, were you not?
No, I was before him.
That was before that time. I mean, I think it's about, he's out on that boat, all credit to him. Oh, we're going to try and get that signal back. I'm so sorry, guys. I can remember Nigel Farage doing that. Yeah. I can remember other media organisations doing it. It's interesting. The BBC just, suddenly discovered their smuggling gangs, and they've been covering it. Who knew? And apparently not a good thing. Who knew? But I mean, it is important that we kind of lay bare exactly what is happening, and our politicians are aware of what is happening. When you've got boatloads of men of fighting age crossing the channel, being escorted by our Navy.
The thing is, you don't need to go out into the middle of the channel to understand that. Politicians need to get themselves down to the communities of Dover, Deal, maybe along to Hastings, because they see people coming off of these boats, running up beaches, free to do as they wish. So I think you just go and speak to those communities, go speak to those people and understand what that does to those communities and how they feel. Yeah. But it isn't very far. I've stood on a beach in Calais. I have looked across at the sparkly lights of Dover. It doesn't look very far. And when the water is calm, it looks very, very easy indeed.
And we often talk about people taking this dangerous route and how they should be put off, but actually an awful lot of people, we understand, I mean, having spoken to people working in this field, that actually they do think it's actually a much easier route than it really is. But you don't even have to go down to Deal or Dover. I mean, that's what Nigel Farage did, the Reform leader, some years ago, and exposed this. And of course, he was far right then. Now, I mean, Chris Philp is pretty solid on this stuff, but nevertheless worked in a government where they failed abjectly to do anything about this. And we had Robert Jenrick, his now colleague, Shadow Justice Secretary. He resigned from the Home Office as an immigration minister over the Rwanda deal. A lot of people said, was that political posturing, setting himself up after election and for a role or not? But there is this concern that actually the Tories are talking a great game now, criticising Labour Party, but they did some zero of nothing when this problem was happening on their watch.
It's all very easy when you're in opposition to point fingers at the government and say you're not doing a very good job, which Labour are now finding out that they're in power and they have to make some difficult decisions. Immigration is always going to be one of those subjects which is uncomfortable, difficult, expensive.
Why is it? I don't understand. I've never been afflicted by this need to be liked. I know this is old-fashioned, but I mean this. I don't mean like you should go around being a nasty person, but I don't think you should change what you think and what you do because someone thinks that. If you believe it, if you've done your research, you've got the facts on your side, or you believe what you're doing is the moral right thing. Then I think you should. I think you should. Oh, we've just got Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, back on the phone rather than on a Zoom. Hopefully that signal will hold. Good afternoon once again to you, Chris. Tell us a bit more about what you've been doing today.
Julia, good afternoon. Well, I've been out on the channel this morning since about 7 o'clock to see if the government's new migration deal with France is working. They signed it yesterday and claimed this would fix the problems. But the evidence that I've seen today is that it's made no difference whatsoever. Within just half an hour, we found 2 boatloads of illegal immigrants crossing the channel. They were being ushered across, escorted across by French boats. The French boats made no attempt at all to stop them near French shores. They ushered them into the quite dangerous shipping lanes where a container ship had to divert course to avoid hitting one of those boats. Border Force came out and picked up the 2 boatloads of illegal immigrants. Yep. And then to add insult to injury, the French collected the life jackets so they could then use them again, facilitating even more crossings. The lesson really, and I've actually recorded the radio conversation, which I've just put on Twitter, the radio conversation on the ship radio between the French commander and the UK commander, when the French guy had brazen cheek to ask for life jackets, and he wanted to make sure all 60 got returned. So what this...
you can have the life jackets back, but you're going to have a migrant in each of them.
That is exactly what's happening. The French are essentially facilitating the migration over the Channel. And what is clear is that the government deal they announced yesterday with such fanfare, claiming it would have a deterrent effect, is in fact having no deterrent effect.
Realistically, come on, Chris Philp. Realistically, no one expected to have an impact straight away. It hasn't even started working. With all due respect, the Rwanda deal didn't have any deterrent effect either, did it?
Well, the Rwanda deal, of course, never started because it was due to start after all the legal challenges. It was due to start at the end of July last year.
That was Rishi Sunak's choice not to hold an election before that. That was a deliberate policy choice.
Well, I don't know about deliberate, but it was certainly a mistake. But that scheme was ready to start at the end of July of last year, but Keir Starmer cancelled it just a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks before it was due to start. Now, that Rwanda scheme would have seen 100% of illegal migrants who arrive getting sent to...
No, it wouldn't. No, that's not true. That's not true. It was going to be a few hundred people and then possibly one day upscaling it. But there were no plans in Rwanda to receive every single person who arrived on the boats. That's simply not true.
Well, 2 points, Julia. The first point is that there was not a cap on that scheme. And the second point, perhaps more importantly, is you've only got to return 100% of arrivals for 1 or 2 months, or maybe at the most 3 months, and people will just stop trying. And I know that because, well, first of all, common sense tells you that. But secondly, when Australia did this about 12 years ago, they were having about 50,000 people a year crossing, so actually slightly more than we're seeing now. And they only had to return the arrivals to a little island called Nauru for about 3 months. And then they just stopped crossing entirely because... Why bother crossing if you know you're 100% sure?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't. That's the whole point. It wouldn't be a long-term scheme. Look, a lot of people have got a lot of questions about this return scheme. Anyway, the 1 in, 1 out, and it's not 1 in, 1 out. It's going to be 800 in, 50 out. We're going to take another 50. We're going to have all of their relatives. Have you managed to work out who's going to assess whether these supposedly legitimate, genuine asylum seekers currently in France, who bizarrely France don't want, on what basis they will be assessed as both safe to come to this country and on what basis they'll be allowed to come to our country because they've got a link here, other than they've got a second cousin living in Leicester?
Yeah, well, in my view, it's going to be impossible to work out whether they're safe to bring in, because Article 16 of the agreement yesterday says that the French will not give any personal data to the UK government about the migrants being sent to the UK. So we've got no idea.
Hold on a minute. I thought the bare minimum was that the British government would be vetting these people.
Well, they claim they're going to do that, but on the basis of what information? Because the French are not going to provide any information at all. So if, for example, the UK has a criminal record in France, or they're suspected by the French government of being a terrorist or an extremist, the French government will not provide that information to the UK government. All the UK government will have to go on is what the migrant tells the UK government. And obviously, if they are a criminal or an extremist, they're not going to disclose that. So there is no real safeguard at all, because the French, it says in black and white, Article 16, the French government will not provide any information about, any personal information about the migrants being sent to the UK.
That is extraordinary, isn't it? Although I don't know why I'd be surprised. But we also know there's this massive, big human rights loophole, massive, big hole cut with neon lights saying, come here, try this, that will prevent us from actually putting any of those supposedly 50-a-week migrants on the train, the plane, the boat or whatever to go back to France. And this is because if they've got any outstanding human rights claims, any other legal challenges, or they claim they're under 18, despite having a receding hairline, that they can basically stop it in its tracks. Surely every single person who gets put on the detainee list for, we're going to detain you because we're going to try and deport you, they immediately start a legal challenge, don't they?
Precisely, Julia. You've hit the nail on the head. They'll firstly claim to be under 18, and because we're the only country in Europe not to use scientific age assessment, anyone that's probably under 25 will get away with that. They'll make a modern slavery claim. They'll make a human rights claim. They'll make all kinds of spurious legal claims to try and avoid getting sent to France. So I think this scheme will get mired in legal difficulty. And to be honest, I don't think it's going to work.
Just finally, can I ask you about the Rwanda scheme, though, because we spent 750 million quid of taxpayers' money, my audience's hard-earned money, on refurbishing some buildings, some accommodation for supposedly a couple of hundred of our illegal migrants to be taken to Rwanda to be assessed and possibly live there. We now found out that Donald Trump is going to be sending some of his deported illegal migrants to Rwanda. And guess what? Accommodation they found. Oh, the stuff that we have funded. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it just makes me appalled to hear that Keir Starmer threw away all the work we'd done, the money we'd spent to set the scheme up, which I think was money well spent, because we're spending billions on asylum hotels, so spending a few hundred million to run the Rwanda scheme, which did not have a numerical cap, was actually good value for money, because if you can spend a few hundred million and stop a problem which is costing billions every year, that is good value for money. Donald Trump is now doing the smart thing and using that accommodation. He's going to show how it can work, and it just demonstrates that Keir Starmer made an appalling decision last July when he cancelled the Rwanda scheme, and now Donald Trump is very cleverly taking advantage of that. So Keir Starmer today has egg on his face because he cancelled a scheme that would have worked, and now the Americans are going to use it instead.
Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary, on the phone live from the channel. Very much appreciate that. Thanks for getting you back on the line. Claire Pearson, just the thing that sticks in my mind most about that is so here are all the migrants. Could we please have the 50
can we have the life
jackets back for the next lot?
I think you
were
right.
We're going to escort over. I mean, sorry, but if I had enough hair to tear out, I would be tearing it out right now.
But I think you're right. I think you should say to the French, yeah, you can have the life jackets back, but they come with a body in it. You must take that individual
Take the migrant back. Absolutely.
But yeah, that's the French for you, sitting there
painful.
watching them cross the 12-mile mark.
Absolutely. Look, there's lots more to get into the show, but I want to get another call because obviously Chris Philp on the line. He used up some of the time we'd take calls, but Rod is on the line. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. Not talking about Rachel Reeves' budget black hole, but Rod, I believe you've got a question for Claire.
Well, first of all, I just want to comment on Chris Philp MP
please.
Getting all outraged and how annoying it is, wasting Tory party money on going out into the English Channel to sound our outrage about Rwanda or whatever. That is a total disgrace on behalf of the Tories as well.
Why?
God knows. What was Chris Philp doing 2 years ago? Diddly squat.
He was a Home Office minister. No, a fair point. I keep pointing out they didn't do anything about it. What was your question for Claire?
Okay, the great thing about Talk TV is that we can see and hear all these so-called special advisors. And I'd like to know what they advise on, and particularly to Claire Purcell, who's with you right now.
Claire Pearsall, yeah.
What was she doing and advising on when she was the special advisor to the immigration minister?
Okay, answer, Claire.
Okay.
2017 to about 2019.
Let her answer, Rod.
Hi, Rod. One of the things that I was working on was the EU settlement scheme. Because of Brexit, we were having to look at what was happening with EU citizens and were they allowed to stay here. We also had Windrush. But more importantly, I was looking at the asylum system. I was looking at detention centres. I was looking at refugee sites.
But you don't get to make any of the decisions. It's the ministers and the Home Secretary.
It's the ministers and the Home Secretary. But that's what I did.
Rod, is that good enough for you?
And what was Caroline Notes doing when you were doing all this?
That was the minister you were working for.
That was the minister I worked for, and she also had to make some pretty tough decisions.
So do they listen to you, or just go, yeah, very good, shall we all go for a 3-hour lunch and then come back? What do you guys, you special advisors, when I see you on Talk, I think, God's sake, that person was actually advising. And that idiot that we just had on now in the middle of the English Channel about 3-4 years too late.
Yeah, Nigel Farage did it a lot earlier, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean...
OK, I'm going to let Claire have a final say, then I've got to go to a break. I'm so sorry, Rod, but, have a go.
It is really, really difficult, OK. I only made my minister listen by standing in front of her saying, don't do this because it's the most ridiculous thing in the world.
She's a lot saner than a lot of people who've worked in government. I'm going to throw that out, otherwise I wouldn't have her on the show.
I think it's because I'm a little bit old and grumpy. I think you need to be a little bit older to be a special advisor.
Not these sort of 28-year-olds who do it. Well, there we are. There you are, Rod. I'm going to have to leave it there, but thank you for the question. Very, very fair point. Put her on her paces. Claire Pierce will more from her in the next few moments as well. Up next, we are going to be talking to the Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism about, well, what a surprise, a rise in anti-Semitism, a spike after the BBC on iPlayer decided to broadcast a death chants from Bob Vylan at Glastonbury. I know I'm as shocked as you are. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:39 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's turn our attention now to the aftermath, the very predictable aftermath of the BBC thinking it was perfectly normal and OK to broadcast on BBC iPlayer to millions of people. Yes, not on the main feed, but actually a lot of people watching it live at the time. The punk rap duo Bobby Vylan shouting, well, chanting against to death to the IDF in the middle of the afternoon during the Glastonbury Festival. It went out live. It was on for quite some minutes. No one thought it was a good idea to pull the plug. And I don't think it will come as a surprise to anyone who's paying attention that anti-Semitic incidents surged to its annual record after those anti-Israel chants at Glastonbury. Let's talk about this with Gideon Falter. He's Chief Executive at the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism and joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Gideon.
Good afternoon, Julia.
I mean, this was exactly what many people feared. And it seems to me that it's kind of a circular argument, isn't it? To me, the anti-Semitism contained in the decisions at the BBC to go, well, we're quite happy to broadcast the Bob Vylan performance live, even though clearly high risk given things that the lead singer Bobby Vylan had already said. But also, we're not really that shocked or horrified by chants of death to the IDF and thousands of people singing along. We're not that bothered about it because their own anti-Semitism meant they didn't really see that that was a problem. And what a surprise. You normalise that, and then you see a spike in anti-Semitic attacks and assaults and verbal abuse of Jewish people. It's entirely predicted and predictable.
It's completely predictable. We'll be posting on our social media in a few minutes just a clip of a couple of young people, probably early 20s, sitting on the tube, playing that exact clip at a Jewish woman. So there's a Jewish woman sitting on the tube got their phone out and it's shouting out death, death to the IDF. And that is what you normalise. That is what you do. And the BBC, you know, you can't give them any credit anymore. You can't cut them any more slack than they've had. You know, if you look at the context in which they broadcast that, they'd just been caught red-handed paying a Hamas official's family for a documentary they then had to pull. Yeah. Their chair and director general had just been hauled in front of Parliament to answer questions. The culture secretary is saying, I want answers. And it comes up with Glastonbury. And Glastonbury's a festival which has been hurtling headlong down a particular path. And it wasn't so long ago they had Corbyn on, right, to the height of the anti-Semitism scandal in Labour. And they say, okay, well, we're gonna platform Kneecap, and the BBC say, okay, fine, maybe we won't put that one on television. And they say, and we're also going to do Bob Vylan. And like you said, Bob Vylan's not exactly some kind of, you know, meek, you know, sort of act that you don't have to worry what he's going to say. He said some pretty bad stuff in the past, and he comes on, he starts chanting this chant completely predictably, and the BBC, with Tim Davie, the Director General, sitting there at Glastonbury at that very moment, everything's kicking off, and the BBC say, oh, no, that's perfectly fine to go out. And they don't cut it for, I think, another 5 hours that they take it off iPlayer. Yeah. It's absolutely horrendous, because it's not like, you know, this is just yet another slip up where, you know, the BBC's had one after another. But this is a symptom of this rot in our institutions, including the BBC, where they are just normalising this anti-Semitism. They're failing to stand up for Jews in this country. Yeah.
And the impact is, and people will say, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm concerned about the children in Gaza. I'm concerned about Palestinian people, concerned about the actions of the Israeli government or the Israeli army, the IDF. And that's what they say. And then the next day, some kids play that video about the IDF to a Jewish woman on a bus, and people don't think there is a clear link. By definition, holding any Jewish person anywhere in Britain, America or anywhere else to account, or even an Israeli civilian to account for the actions of their soldiers or their government or the decisions of any policy on food aid for civilians in Gaza, by definition that itself is anti-Semitic, because, oh, well, it's the Jews, isn't it? And that's the message that was sent out by the BBC, that view was normal and okay.
And that's exactly it. You know, so many people watching this will be thinking it is so completely evident that, first of all, if you normalise this kind of thing on the BBC and also at these marches that we see through our streets, on our campuses, it's, you know, even in our schools, in our NHS, if you allow this kind of hatred to go unchecked, it's going to lead to an uptick in hatred against the minority that's being targeted. And the second thing that's completely evident is, you know, we've been hearing for ages people saying, oh, no, I don't hate Jews, I just hate Zionists. You know, we did polling of the British Jewish community. 80% of British Jews say that they're Zionists, only 6% say they aren't Zionists. And so you've got basically these people walking around saying, oh, no, I don't hate Jews. I just hate maybe all but 6% of them. I mean, it's absolutely...
Well, they definitely hate me as well, because I'm a Zionist, but I keep getting people telling me this is an insult on you Zionists. I'm like, I don't think that's the insult you think it is. But there we are. Can I ask you about something else as well, which I think is, because I think an awful lot of this hatred of Israel and or Jews has come about because of the Hamas incredibly successful propaganda campaign that we have seen over the last, goodness me, a couple of years now, where despite the fact that they, you know, committed the atrocities of October the 7th, despite the fact that they put their own people into harm's way, despite the fact that they've said they would commit it October the 7th, you know, every single day of the week if they could, despite the fact they've got hostages still being starved. And we saw these horrific images of two hostages still being, I mean, was it 667 days now, still being held killed in the tunnels, one being forced to dig his own grave in the tunnel. I mean, absolutely horrific, evil. I mean, I use the word evil images, despite the fact that they could feed every single child in Gaza if they want to with their own stocks of food they've stolen, despite the fact they could have kept every single child and mum and woman safe in the tunnels if they'd chosen to, but they didn't. They wanted them to be in harm's way. Despite all of that, it's Israel that gets the blame all the time. And lots of the images that we've seen that promoted a lot of hate of Israel have been of starving children. Some of those are completely they're untrue. There are children who have congenital problems. So one of the children who was on the front page of the newspapers was actually in Italy for the last few months being treated. So it's an absolute flown out by the IDF, by the way. So a complete lie. But Bild in Germany, a very, very, very prominent news publication, they have published a photograph of a Gaza photographer staging Hamas propaganda. Got an image. So a lot of those images we see with children leaning, looking desperate, beautiful little, children, big eyes, looking sunken cheeks, holding their pans, desperate for food, showing that the other side of the camera, completely fake imagery, completely fake. They're not crowding around food. It's an empty lorry. It's all being staged. A lot of these photographs have made it onto the front page of our newspapers. They're all over social media, and every time they are there, you get not just people on social media, but you get people like Keir Starmer and people like Donald Trump condemning the Israeli government for not getting food aid in. If there are children genuinely starving and really, really was a problem in Gaza, I'm assuming they wouldn't have to stage photographs of it because you just see it everywhere. What do you make of these staged photographs and the proof that they are happening?
I mean, this is the thing. I think that here in Britain, we've got to get our heads around a couple of things. Number one is that Hamas is brilliantly gifted at manipulating us. They say a picture speaks 1,000 words, and they are clearly, there is there is no mistaking the fact that Hamas controls what we see out of Gaza. And we don't know exactly what the situation is on the ground. I haven't been there. I don't know. But what we do know is that a lot of the information coming to us is being manipulated by people who have a particular genius for it. And by the way, Hamas, in publishing videos of hostages looking like Holocaust survivors, starving, absolutely at death's door, Hamas does that proudly.
Yeah.
They are very proud of the starvation that they are inflicting on those hostages. So the first thing is to remember that what we're seeing out of Gaza is largely coming through the prism of Hamas. The second thing that we need to remember is that here in Britain, we can, our politicians can pontificate all they like, but the fact is Britain is not very relevant to what's happening all those thousands of miles.
Recognising Palestinian state and things, yes.
And we need to pay attention in this country to what is happening on our own doorstep.
Yeah.
And that's what things like today's report show us. There is a surge in hatred. Yeah. Our young people, if you look at what some of our young people believe, by the way, not just about Jews, if you look at what our young people believe, they are being radicalized beneath our very noses to believe really dangerous things, crazy things. And if you look at who's perpetrating the anti-Semitic incidents and you start drilling down into it, you start to get a picture. Our young people are no longer immune to hatred in the way we thought. We always thought this was the anti-racist generation.
They all think they're the nice people, but they don't realise. Now, Gideon, I wish we had longer. I have to let it go. The Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Thank you so much for joining us. 12:49 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. This is Talk.
They are fitting rooms, unisex fitting rooms. The staff members are very uncomfortable with this. It is wrong that the executives can sit in an ivory tower and say, well, let's be inclusive, let's allow men to carry out these functions, but the people that are actually dealing with the front line of it are not getting any help and support or proper guidance. They're really, on the whole, they're uncomfortable. I dare say there's few women in the land that would be happy with a man fitting them for a bra.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, coming up to 12:53. Claire Pistol's still with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire, quick question. Have you ever flown on a convicted paedophile's private jet to their private island?
No.
No, I would find that a really easy decision to make, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
I
it's
would
quite
maybe
simple.
go, no, I will not do this.
Yeah, I'd rather not.
Would you have question marks raised about a man who had no children himself, no daughter who was teenagers, and yet was surrounded constantly by 14 or 15-year-old newbar girls?
I would think he was a bit of a wrong un.
Yes, I would have done that. I would have thought that's what everyone would think. But apparently not some of our, well, from the most famous and most powerful men in the world, many of whom not only went on Jeffrey Epstein's private jets, but also went to his private island, where we know now that young women had been trafficked and were, let's face it, being raped on a grand scale. He was, of course, a convicted paedophile, really quite a long way back, but many still stayed friends with him. Hello, Prince Andrew, I'm thinking about you. Now, though, there is a US Congressional Committee investigating who knew what about Jeffrey Epstein and what were their links with him. And they now include, among the people they're going to ask as witnesses and are subpoenaing, the former US Democrat President, Bill Clinton, and the former Secretary of State and former US Senator, his wife, Hillary Clinton. Let's talk about this with Adam Coleman. He's a columnist at the New York Post. Good afternoon to you.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Thanks for joining us. OK, so first of all, what is this investigation, this inquiry by the Republican-controlled House Oversight Committee? What are they hoping to learn, and why are they subpoenaing the former president and the former Secretary of State?
Yeah, there are certain accusations that they want clarification on. There have been accusations from victims implicating that Clinton was involved to some extent. They want clarification from them. But if I'm to be just 100% honest, I think everyone knows that nothing much is going to come from this. Clinton is not going to sit in front of Congress and going to be on C-SPAN and be on the record visually, especially forever, as he's talking about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. He's likely going to be non-compliant. They'll probably fight legally and maybe negotiate for him to sort of be compliant by answering questions behind the scenes and answering only certain questions. But no one wants to actually sit in front of Congress and have that visual.
I mean, it's quite something for a former president, bearing in mind, I mean, I'm picturing right now, watching live those questions, about Monica Lewinsky. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Well, yeah, you did.
Yeah, and listen, he was the president at the time, and he was kind of forced into that position. But I
think it was Monica who was forced into that position, but that's another story.
Yes, well played. But yeah, I think in this circumstance, they'll find every way to avoid that. And there's precedents for this as far as negotiating terms. So they're compliant, but not completely compliant. Yeah.
But is this about simply distracting attention about the Epstein files as they're known? I mean, Donald Trump said he was going to publish the Epstein files. All these people knew him. He goes, I was friends with him. Everyone knew him. He was, rich financier and billionaire in New York. Everyone knew him. Everyone went to his parties. But then he said he cut him off, because he was stealing his masseurs from Mar-a-Lago. Wanted nothing to do with him. But there's a lot of focus now because the president has chosen not to publish the Epstein files. His old ex-mate, Elon Musk, said that Donald Trump was named in those Epstein files. There's a lot of pressure on the government. Is this actually about the Republicans trying to help the president by basically saying, oh, look over here, look at the Clintons?
Well, also keep in mind the Democrats are supporting this as well. And part of the reason why is politics, because Donald Trump didn't necessarily handle this well, or people within his administration didn't handle this well. It doesn't make Donald Trump look good to further go after Jeffrey Epstein, especially because Donald Trump was a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's at one point.
Yeah.
So I think this is pure politics. I don't think the Democrats actually care whether he was trafficking more women or not.
Well, no one apparently did. I mean, it seemed to me, if I've watched some documentaries about this and read, an awful lot about it, that it was kind of common knowledge. I mean, it was certainly common knowledge after he was initially actually, convicted of trafficking a girl over state lines and things. And he involved an underage girl. I mean, it was on a grand scale. There were deals made. There's obviously something very dodgy about this. Do you think that we are going to see these Epstein files published? Because there are so many conspiracy theories. Was he working for the CIA? Was he blackmailing people? What was going on, and was basically every powerful man in the world somehow involved?
Well, personally, I think they oversold this. I think for many years before Trump got into office, people like Kash Patel went around podcast after podcast overselling this. And now
the
they
FBI
have power.
chief.
Now the FBI chief. Now they have clearance. They have all this stuff, and they come back with absolutely nothing. And I think it's because everybody was running with something that they presumed existed. Maybe it actually happened. Whether there's evidence for it, it sounds like there isn't. Otherwise, it behooves Donald Trump to actually move forward with it. It makes him look like a hero, stopping the pedophile ring that's going on. So I don't think this is actually about covering up any wrongdoings from Donald Trump or anything like that.
Oh, very
By
interesting.
mishandling this, it's giving the presumption that he is hiding something.
Well, of course it is, exactly. Adam Coleman, great to talk to you, economist at the New York Post. Claire Pissell, your thoughts on that?
I think don't go on jets to private islands with people with incredibly dodgy pasts. It seems a good way to live
some of
in
these
life.
people were with people. I mean, again,